Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal. See playlist for other chapters and novels. Join now our Telegram channel now and enjoy exclusive early access. t.me/blood_immortal_official. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 761, What's This? Chapter 761, What's This? I've even used my killer move. Do I really have to head out and go at it with him? Even though Saint was looking pretty wretched right now, Lin Fan knew that this was only on the surface. In case of any powerful being, even if they were to turn into a pile of meat, they would be able to regenerate back to normal, let alone having a single arm blown off. N.O.V.L.P. in .C. Ohm. Indeed, with a single burst of a roar, Saint's powers rumbled as that arm of his that was severed was covered by a ball of flesh and blood that pulsated. Before long, a fresh arm was regrown out of it. In fact, Saint's aura did not seem like it had changed at all, as though the blast from earlier on did not deal him even a single shred of damage. Ha 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 ha, what other skills do you have? Throw them at me. The utmost being Saint strode out with a huge step and slammed out with a single palm, having the entire heaven and earth smelt floating above the ancient Saint sacrificial altar. No more skills. Lin Fan rolled his eyes. He truly did not have any other way out now. Weren't you all that great earlier on? How about now? You're not coming at me anymore. Saint placed his hands behind his back as he stepped up onto the sacrificial altar. His aura was boundless and possessed an extraordinary might. Now, this was what a true utmost being was like. Every single action they took brought with it a devastating heavenly impact. And now that Saint was being so brazen, Lin Fan's heart was aching. This fellow was so bloody cocky that he was practically bringing on the arrogance of his ancestors. Due to a moment of carelessness, he had been overwhelmed by Saint's comeback. But, even if that were the case, so what? As long as his heaven and earth smelt wasn't destroyed, he would never ever die. Saint, don't you get too cocky now. Yours truly will hide in his heaven and earth smelt today. Make me come out if you've got the capabilities. The pain in Lin Fan's heart right now was inexplicable. Now that Saint had made a comeback and was trampling all over his head, Lin Fan could not do anything to him at all. This was one hell of a sin in itself. Lin Fan lied within the heaven and earth smelt as his mind began to whirl. He truly did not know what he could do now. This beast was getting quite overbearing now. Did he really have to go out and fight with him to death? But, ever since this guy had summoned that ancient Saint sacrificial altar, his strength was way stronger than before. What did Lin Fan have to fight him to the death with? So what if he had been through the Paradise Thunder Calamity? So what if he had 3 parts to his essence spirit? He still couldn't take down this guy at all. Forget it. Time to lie down like a corpse then. Maybe, I'll give it a shot when I come up with some idea someday. Lin Fan sighed out in exasperation. But just at this moment, a single sentence of Saint had Lin Fan's heart thumping furiously. HMPH. Heaven and earth smelt. Indeed, your utmost has to acknowledge that I can't open it up. However, your utmost will definitely not let you have such an easy time either. Since that's the case, you shall spend an eternity within this smelt then. The tone of the utmost being Saint was frosty. Ancient Saint sacrifice, suppress all living beings. An eternal existence. The reason why all living beings cultivate is so that they can obtain a life of eternal carefreeness. And, your utmost here shall grant your wish today. You shall have an eternal life of suppression by the ancient Saint sacrificial altar. Suddenly, Saint opened up his hand as though he was tearing open the void. This was a sealing technique of the ancient race. And furthermore, this was deployed by Saint right now. Hence, its might was unparalleled. If Lin Fan were to be sealed here, there was no way he could ever escape for all eternity. Even though Saint had a treasure such as the ancient Saint sacrificial altar, he knew that the moment the heavens will awaken, the ancient Saint sacrificial altar would leave his side and return to its rightful place with the heavens will. But right now, Saint had just found a new treasure, and that was the heaven and earth smelt in Lin Fan's hands. He would just have to wait for the awakening of the heavens will, and by then, Saint would borrow its strength to refine Lin Fan entirely before grabbing this treasure in his hands. A treasure like this with a startling defensive capability was exactly the thing that Saint required. As for that move that Lin Fan had just used on him, while Saint was pained over it, he was extremely familiar with it. Even though that fella could have all those Samsung race beings self-destructing, he had not managed to grasp the true essence of the self-destruction secrets behind the Samsung race beings. Once this matter blew over, Saint would then go all out to capture a huge bunch of Samsung race beings before training them up to be truly powerful. By then, coupled with the heaven and earth smelt, who else in the world would be a match for him? No, even if it were the other utmost beings, they wouldn't be able to do it either. Not good. Lin Fan's face drained of color. He had thought that he was safe. But judging by the situation now, it was all on his own thinking. On the black surface of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, a crack started opening up. Within the crack burst forth an intense beam of light that surrounded the entire heaven and earth smelt, trying to pull at it relentlessly. Saint clapped out with both hands. Instantly, thousands and thousands of runes started dancing around. These runes carried with them sealing properties as they encircled the surface of the heaven and earth smelt. Even within the heaven and earth smelt, Lin Fan could sense the sealing powers that were being emanated. This saint has too many tricks up his sleeves. If this were to carry on, I might truly be met with a tragedy. Lin Fan was startled and did not know what to do for a moment. Those thousands of runes gave off a godly glow as sealing devils of all sizes howled out. They seemed bent on suppressing all the living beings in this universe. Under the power of this sealing, the heaven and earth smelt seemed as though it was starting to dull down and unable to defend for much longer. I've really been too overconfident from the start. This heaven and earth smelt was only a legendary item for crafting weapons, not some treasure, and had no offensive capabilities. If he were to hide in this heaven and earth smelt without coming out at all, given the toughness of the heaven and earth smelt, he could naturally protect himself without any worries. But, it was hard to say that Saint might not make use of some other form of powers to kill him. If he were to be suppressed within that ancient saint's sacrificial altar for, say 10 million years without any replenishment of saint spirit chi, he might have to die from withering. No, I cannot just sit here and die. Lin Fan was ready to take the gamble now. If he were to die just like this, he would really be extremely indignant. Ha 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 ha, Saint burst out laughing as though everything was under his control. FCK, your daddy is going to fight you. Lin Fan turned into a streak of light as he bolted forth from the heaven and earth smelt. Slapping out with his palm, he kept the heaven and earth smelt back into his system. Since you're out, then your utmost being will have to accept this treasure graciously, I suppose. The utmost being saint had wanted to snatch over the heaven and earth smelt. But all of a sudden, it seemed as though it had evaporated from the entire world and vanished entirely. In fact, he even lost any connection with those sealing runes that were embedded on the surface of the heaven and earth smelt. Where did it go? Where in the world had it gone to? Saint was extremely bewildered, but, when he caught sight of Lin Fan, he let out a cold smirk. Seal. Suppress. The 5 fingers of Saint took on the shape of a claw that descended from the heavens, as an apocalyptic power that encompassed the entire heavens plummeted down. Lin Fan felt as though his entire body had received some sort of an immense pressure as he flew out towards the ancient saint's sacrificial altar uncontrollably. This guy is trying to have my true body pushed into that crack. Lin Fan deployed all his skills as he churned his powers to its maximum. His universal elixir was also revolving at a frightening speed right now. However, he still could not resist this tremendous force that was pushing him. All of a sudden, Lin Fan realized that there was a horrifying power that was channeling within the crack of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. Boom! All of a sudden, the power burst right up into the heavens and caged Lin Fan in it. Lin Fan yelled out in rage as his entire body was being tugged at by it. That eternally imperishable body of his was starting to get destroyed. Brat, your utmost is going to wallop you into your core essence. In the eyes of Saint, Lin Fan was just a bigger-sized ant. Without the protection of the heaven and earth smelt right now, the only thing awaiting him was death. I'm dead meat, Lin Fan was truly regretting in his heart. He had bit on more than he could chew this time around, and even dragged his life into it. Bam! Instantly, Lin Fan's body exploded into a ball of bloodied meat. The ball of bloodied meat was pulsating as though it was trying to regroup. To think that it would come to this one day. Lin Fan shouted out in his heart. Ha ha ha, go to hell. Saint opened up his hand and grabbed at the ball of bloodied meat. He wanted to devour this entire ball of bloodied meat whole so that the other party could suffer an eternity of torment within his body, and would never ever reincarnate forever. But just at this moment, a mystifying aura burst out of the ball of bloodied meat. What's this? Both Lin Fan and Saint were equally shocked. Chapter 762. I've got thousands of methods to kill you. Chapter 762. I've got thousands of methods to kill you. Lin Fan could dare to swear to God that he hadn't obtained any of these things before. At the moment he was slapped into a pile of bloodied meat by Saint, he had completely given up on fighting back. But, the weird phenomenon that was happening right now caused him to feel equally startled. The moment that life-stealing claw of Saint was slapping out, Lin Fan had already given up on defending. All sorts of mystical powers surged through that single claw. However, all of a sudden, a golden ball of light rose up. A boundless power pulsed out from it, causing the claw to break apart instantly. Just what in the world is this thing? When Saint sensed this aura, he got really alarmed. There was a bad feeling about this in his heart, as though something was repressing him. The golden light gradually dissipated, and it was only then that Lin Fan could clearly make out what it was. Tadpole-sized text words. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. All of these tadpole-sized text characters twisted and danced around before floating above Lin Fan. He could tell that all of these tadpole-sized text characters were really extraordinary, as they gave off a mysterious aura. This was an aura that had never been seen before. Yet, it was enough to rattle one's heart. What's going on? What are you trying to do? Suddenly, Lin Fan yelped out. His pile of bloodied meat had suddenly started gravitating towards those tadpole-sized text characters involuntarily. At the same time, those characters started gleaming with a series of godly light before floating up gently and turning into a long dragon that coiled itself around Lin Fan's bloodied meat. Lin Fan had initially thought that these mysterious text characters were going to consume his meat. However, all of a sudden, he realized that his powers were actually regenerating. Furthermore, there was a really mysterious feeling that was entering his heart. All of a sudden, Lin Fan felt himself being immersed deeply into this mysterious sensation. Damn it, just what sort of capabilities does an ant like you have again? Your utmost refuses to believe that I can't suppress you entirely. Noticing that Lin Fan's bloodied meat was showing signs of regrouping, Saint flew into a rage and slapped out with both fists instantly, wanting to suppress him down once more. Shing! All of a sudden, when Saint's powers made contact with those tadpole-sized text characters, they started vibrating intensely as though they could contain anything within this world. They wanted to absorb these powers. How could this be? What's going on with these text characters? Saint was startled. He could not believe that his own powers would be unable to take down these text characters. Saint did not recognize these text characters, neither had he ever seen them before. However, the aura that was emanating from them was causing him to tense up. At this moment, a single text character started floating up from within the pile. It was contorting and twisting like a spear, a saber, and a dragon. Most common people would not be able to make out what it was at all. But, when Lin Fan looked over at first glance, he had a stark feeling that he somehow seemed to recognize these characters. Attack. The character that floated up was actually the word for attack. This character started swiveling around with a horizontal and vertical stroke. It was just 2 moves, yet it burst forth with a killing power. With that, the strongest attack between the heaven and earth was born just like that. Saint's face changed starkly. Even though there didn't seem to be too much on the surface, he could feel an immensely powerful killing intent that was gushing out at him. Thud! Saint was knocked back as he coughed out fresh blood. His face was alarmed. How could this be? Saint's face was frightened right now, unable to believe everything before his eyes. Just what in the world are these text characters? How in the world would they possess such offensive capabilities? Holy FCK, how ferocious. Even though Lin Fan did not know what in the world this was, the fact that a single text character could cause Saint to spit out blood was something that had Lin Fan's heart thumping furiously. FCK him. Hurry and FCK him up. Lin Fan felt like he was alive once more as his heart was now filled with a boundless hope. While he did not know what this was, as long as it could kill Saint, it must definitely be some good sh*t. Damn it, your utmost refuses to believe that he can't kill you. Coming out here this time around, Saint could be said to have taken an immensely huge loss. Not only were his Samsung race beings gone, he had even revealed his ancient Saint sacrificial altar. And now, if he left without killing this beast, he wouldn't be able to take it lying down. Go to hell. Saint's eyes were flushed red. As he slapped out with both palms, the ancient Saint sacrificial altar started vibrating violently. A series of light beam gushed up just like banners that bolted out towards Lin Fan to kill him. This was the power of the ancient Saint sacrificial altar. An accumulated power over thousands and thousands of years were now entirely gushing out at this moment. All of a sudden, yet another text character floated up. Defend. It was just a single word, yet it seemed as though the strongest defense between the heavens and earth had just been created, such that no attacks could penetrate through it at all. Bam! The moment the power that gushed forth from the ancient saint's sacrificial altar made contact with this word, it dissipated instantly without a single reaction. This. Saint clutched at his chest and nearly choked on his own breath. This was a blow too huge for him to take in. Ha ha! Looking at the state Saint was in right now, Lin Fan burst out laughing. This was an opportunity for a comeback. Even though Lin Fan himself was stumped at this comeback method, that didn't matter anymore. As long as he could win, nothing else mattered. Rebirth. Rebirth. These tadpole-sized text characters possessed a boundless power. Under the booster of this power, Lin Fan felt his entire body was surging with power. The pile of bloodied meat started fusing back. In a jiffy, Lin Fan was good as before. How about now? Are you really pissed off now? Lin Fan looked at Saint and chuckled. He then flicked out with his finger, FCK him to death. In Lin Fan's eyes, since these tadpole-sized text characters were willing to help him, they should naturally obey his commands as well. However, all of a sudden, Lin Fan stood there awkwardly, realizing that the text characters were just floating in the sky without any intention of moving at all. What's going on now? Lin Fan was stumped, not really understanding this. Towards these text characters, Saint was filled with a serious dread. But, when he saw how Lin Fan was unable to control them, he heaved out a sigh of relief. Based on the situation that was displayed earlier on, if these text characters were to strike out, it would definitely be quite troublesome for him. And, you don't seem like you're able to control those text characters. Saint smirked out coldly. For him, this was a good thing. Lin Fan's face changed. Saint had hit the mark right on the spot. Tons of thoughts were running through his head right now. Ding! Congratulations on activating the Heaven and Earth Sutra. Heaven and Earth Sutra, the only text characters between the heaven and earth. Every single text character possesses a boundless amount of power. At this moment, the notification from the system rang out as Lin Fan's heart tightened. Lin Fan knew of this Heaven and Earth Sutra. This was something that he had obtained a long time ago. This was a treasure that had appeared back when he had fused with the right arm of the Ancient One. Could all of these be the Heaven and Earth Sutra? At this moment, Lin Fan could feel the connection between him and the Heaven and Earth Sutra. At the same time, he realized something. He finally understood why the Ancient One was killed. It wasn't because the Supreme Being and the others were strong. It was because the Ancient One had been suppressed from the very beginning. This Heaven and Earth Sutra possessed an incredible might to it that could repress the powers of the Ancient One. And, it was precisely because of that which allowed the Supreme Being and the others to split up the body parts of the Ancient One. Lin Fan looked at Saint and could not help but smirk out. This was a bright and dazzling smirk as though he had just found new land. "Ant, what are you smiling at?" When Saint caught sight of that detestable smirk from Lin Fan, he barked out. "I'm smiling at the thought of how I'm going to kill you later on. But, it's quite the dilemma, to be honest. I've got a few thousand methods to kill you with. But at this moment, I can't decide which one of them I should use on you." Lin Fan gave off a look of helplessness as though he was making a really tough decision right now. This feeling that he was having right now was similar to sitting on a roller coaster. It was scary at times and exhilarating at others. To think that being beaten to a pulp of bloodied meat could allow him to activate the Heaven and Earth Sutra. He was just too damned lucky, wasn't he? Chapter 763, How could something so good exist? Chapter 763, How could something so good exist? Ha ha, Saint scoffed out in disdain. However, he did not take action. The situation right now was looking troublesome for him. He did not even know what those text characters were. However, he knew that the moment he struck, it would be defended by those text characters. Seemed like it was going to be tough killing that ant with this. But, even if that were the case, he had to get this ant killed. "Saint, the moment of dread has arrived for you." Now that Lin Fan wielded the Heaven and Earth Sutra, his confidence was practically exploding. A single word of disagreement was more than enough for him to take action. When Saint saw Lin Fan striking out, his heart leapt with joy. "Good. You've decided to come seek death now. If you were to remain under the protection of those text characters, your utmost being might truly not be able to do anything to you. But now, you've asked for it." Saint had not expected for this fella to dare to strike out at him. Didn't he know that without the protection of those text characters, he would be killed in the blink of an eye? Lin Fan looked at how Saint was coming forth with a monstrous momentum and smiled out while raising his finger. "Attack." Those tadpole-sized text characters that were floating about gently suddenly went berserk as the attack word formed right in front of Lin Fan's face. A boundless power burst forth and shot out at Saint. How could that be? The moment Saint saw this, his face was filled with disbelief. The killing intent was decisive while the attack power was formidable. All of a sudden, Saint who was not prepared to defend at all and was caught in a fluster. However, Lin Fan would not let this opportunity slide. Trap, suppress. Waving his hands, 2 words swiveled out. These words carried the power of the heaven and earth, limitless and without boundaries, eternally imperishable. Whack! All of a sudden, Saint was filled with wounds all over his body. His heart was filled with indignance right now. Even though this human was nothing but an ant in his eyes, the text characters brought with them a boundless amount of power. To think that the combination would injure him to this extent. You dogs *T, I'll have you suffer a fate worse than death. Saint bellowed out. He hadn't expected this guy to turn the tables on him. If the heavens gave him one more chance, Saint swore that he wouldn't mince this human into that bloodied mess, and would just kill him outright. If that were the case, this wouldn't be the scene that was happening right now. Hee, I'll let you have a good fight with these text characters first. Yours truly will add in some ingredients for you. Lin Fan chuckled out. All of a sudden, he slammed out with thousands of punches. The spirit of Bigra rumbled furiously and caged up the entire world. Lin Fan did not know if Bigra would have any effect at all. But, if he didn't try, he wouldn't know. And, if the spirit of Bigra could truly work, then this would be one hell of a huge deal. No matter what, Saint was an utmost being of the ancient race. Therefore, he had some sort of an inkling towards Lin Fan's methods as well. He knew that this mist might look extremely simple on the surface, but there was definitely more than what met the eye to this. As for Lin Fan, he had all of a sudden obtained yet another killer move. Furthermore, this was something that he had obtained by chance. Well, this was probably how simple things were when one was an invincible being. Even though his own physical strength wasn't all that high just yet, with the Heaven and Earth Sutra now, it didn't matter who the opponent was. He could still restrain them all the same. Within the void, Saint was dodging left and right while the mist before him was getting thicker by the second. All of a sudden, Saint could feel his inner heart getting frantic. There must be something up with this mist. I must definitely not let that damned guy succeed. But, these text characters are really way too troublesome. To think that they would possess the power of heaven and earth. But, what sort of a heaven and earth would give birth to such characters? Saint, this sacrificial altar of yours is pretty decent. Yours truly shall confiscate it for you. Lin Fan touched the ancient saint's sacrificial altar at his feet and said. The moment Saint heard this, he was enraged. You dare. Don't get hasty now. First, let yours truly take a look to check if there's a word for refining things within these text characters. Lin Fan sniggered out. With that, Saint could not help but get nervous. The ancient saint's sacrificial altar was practically his entire foundation. Even though he firmly believed that there should be no way this human could actually cultivate the sacrificial altar, he did not know why, but he could not shrug off that bad feeling in his heart at all. Seems like I've really found it. Okay, you have your fun first. Yours truly is going to start cultivating it now. Cultivate. All of a sudden, the text character for cultivate floated out. Given Lin Fan's own strength, there was no way he could cultivate this ancient saint's sacrificial altar on his own. However, with the Heaven and Earth Sutra now being so overpowered, he might as well give it a shot. And, if it could really cultivate out, then that would be a joyous occasion for sure. With that, the ancient saint's sacrificial altar was directly basked in a bright beam of light. Saint could feel his heart rattling right now as though something was trying to steal his belongings. Stop that now. Saint could sense that something was amiss as that degenerate was truly trying to cultivate the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. How could Saint allow him to succeed? Go to hell. Saint was crazed right now. Without saying anything more, he lunged out straight at Lin Fan. And just at this moment, the spirit of Bigra finally seized this chance to coil out and wrap Saint within it entirely. Get lost. Saint tore at it with both his hands, trying to rip the mist off him. But just as he was going to dart at Lin Fan once more, 3 tadpole-sized text characters stood in front of him and blocked his way once more. Damn it. *CKING God damn it. This sacrificial altar is not bad, to be honest. And, to think that yours truly had once sacrificed items in the past as well. Seems like it was all exploited by you, Like I said, just who in the world would be so black-hearted to give me so little benefits after I sacrificed so many items? So bloody despicable, cheap, and shameless. If yours truly were to take control over this ancient saint's sacrificial altar, anyone who contributes with sacrifices in the future, yours truly will definitely not be stingy with them. No, vel, b, in. C. Ohm. Saint's face was entirely flushed red right now and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. This was a humiliation on its own, an utter humiliation. Stop that now. Saint could feel his connection with the ancient saint's sacrificial altar getting weaker by the moment, as though it could break off at any moment. How could this be? To think that a human would be able to cultivate this. Just what sort of a thing are these text characters? Why do they possess such powers? Saint was wailing out in his heart. Due to his emotional outburst, his blood was pumping way faster, resulting in him getting fatigued quicker. As a result, the spirit of Bigra was like a fish which had just entered water, and was starting to occupy the inner heart of Saint. Oh, it's going to be done soon. Yes, this Heaven and Earth Sutra is really incomparably strong. Even though I'm only a divine celestial level 8 state being, I can use this Heaven and Earth Sutra to hang an utmost being up and whip him. If any mere commoner were to get this, wouldn't they be able to hang me up and whip me instead? Lin Fan was afraid now. Truly fearful, but then again, this thing was thankfully obtained by him instead. Master, please help me. Suddenly, the voice of the Thunder Trainer King rang out from the paradise. Lin Fan was startled, not knowing what was going on. Master, there's no spirit chi left within the paradise anymore. Your Trainer King here is still in the midst of cultivating and my supply was cut off. The Thunder Trainer King was sobbing out right now. How could this be? The spirit chi within the paradise of yours truly is extremely plentiful and vast as the oceans. Are you trying to joke with me? Lin Fan scolded. But when Lin Fan took a look inside his own paradise, he was shocked silly. Why in the world wasn't there any spirit chi within his paradise? Even if there was any, it was being depleted extremely quickly. And, the direction of their depletion was none other than towards the Heaven and Earth Sutra. Holy FCK, Lin Fan had his mind blown right now. He knew it. How in the world could there be something so good for free? From the very beginning when he had obtained this Heaven and Earth Sutra, the system had not activated it at all. Seemed like it was to prevent him from accidentally using these text characters by accident and ending up being squeezed into a dried up corpse. And, how long had it been since he had used it right now? To think that the spirit chi within his paradise would be sucked up dry just like that. Lin Fan thought about it. Perhaps the only reason why he was allowed to activate the Heaven and Earth Sutra right now was because he was in a situation of life and death and the system had no other choice. Horrifying. Bam. Suddenly, Saint knocked a single text character back as the text character twisted and contorted before returning to Lin Fan's side, evidently dimming down. This is going to go bad real soon. Looking at everything before him, Lin Fan could really feel his nuts hurting. Cultivate. Hurry up and cultivate for yours truly. Lin Fan started pushing it. Now that the spirit chi within his paradise had been completely spent, Lin Fan realized that the spirit chi within his own body was depleting rapidly as well. It shouldn't be long before he would turn into a dried-up corpse entirely. Haha, Ant, your death has arrived. Seems like these text characters require an immense amount of powers to sustain them. Saint had realized that Lin Fan's aura was gradually getting weaker as the powers within his body were starting to seep outwards. Because of that, he burst out laughing. Hooey. Lin Fan raised his head. When he saw the excited look on Saint's face, he scoffed out coldly. Why, do you think that you've got yours truly now? I'll make sure I'll have you crying later. Chapter 764. Seems like it'll be tough on you. Chapter 764. Seems like it'll be tough on you. Do you really think that you will have a chance to make a comeback? These text characters possess a boundless amount of power. How can an ant-like human such as yourself command them so easily? Right now, you have already been seen through by your utmost here. Do you really think that your powers will be enough for you to continue sustaining these text characters? As far as Saint was concerned, Lin Fan was going to be done in by him for sure. In the beginning, he was still at a loss for what to do. Furthermore, the power of heaven and earth harnessed by these text characters were not the powers of the ancient Saint world. This was something way too incredible for Saint. Out of the myriads of worlds out there, the ancient Saint world reigned supreme. How could there be a world out there which possessed a power that could triumph over the ancient Saint world like this? Haha, this is a miraculous encounter of your utmost here to slay an ant-like human such as yourself and steal your treasure in order to fulfill my destiny. Today, I'm going to see what other capabilities you've got. Saint burst out laughing wildly. he was exhilarated in his heart. He could clearly sense the powers within the body of this ant-like human flowing out rapidly. If this were to carry on, it wouldn't be long before the human turned into a dried-up corpse. An utmost treasure such as these text characters which could defend against someone like him was something that Saint was hell-bent to get his hands on. No matter what, he had to get this from the grasp of the human. However, all of a sudden, Saint's face changed. Somehow, he had a really bad feeling. This was a mysterious feeling as though something was trying to occupy his heart from within. Saint, are you feeling anything right now? Looking at the state Saint was in, Lin Fan could not help but chuckle out. And it was just as Saint had thought. The powers within Lin Fan's body were depleting out rapidly. However, that didn't matter to Lin Fan. After all, he found out that his spirit of Bigra was actually effective against Saint. Even though it took a long time to start acting, as long as it worked, nothing else mattered. Feeling, your utmost being is feeling nothing at all. Your death has arrived, Saint scoffed out coldly as he focused his attention. He had already wasted far too much time than he should with this ant-like human. And now that this opportunity was right before his eyes, Saint was going to have this human slain no matter what. Really now, at times, you really ought to pay attention to what your heart is telling you. Lin Fan did not want to say anything more. Right now, he was at the final stages of cultivating the ancient Saint sacrificial altar. How could he give up at this critical moment? Lin Fan was hell-bent on getting a treasure like this. As long as he could get it, this saint would definitely have to die from puking blood. Instantly, Lin Fan retracted a couple of text characters, leaving only, attack, around Saint. Damned ant, your powers are already unable to sustain all of these. Let your utmost here have you defeated entirely then. Even though this single text character was really formidable to Saint, he knew that it couldn't restrict him for too long either. Now that the chance was here, how could he give it up? Cultivate all things in the world. Everything shall belong to me. Lin Fan opened up his hands as a boundless amount of power burst forth from it. There was an extremely strong weapon spirit existing within the ancient saint sacrificial altar. However, under the power of this single text character, cultivate, it was suffering endlessly and was unable to fight back. Even if one had a torrential amount of power, one would have to endure it obediently. Saint, save me, this human is cultivating me and I can't hold on for much longer. Within the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, a sorrowful wail suddenly rang out. This was from the weapon spirit of the altar. Beast, stop that now. The moment Saint sensed the cries of his weapon spirit, he burst out in anger. His attacks got even more ferocious as he was bent on slapping Lin Fan to death. I can't stop it anymore. And to think that you would still have the mood to be concerned over this. I'd advise you to pay some attention to your body's condition instead. Lin Fan had already realized that the current status of Saint wasn't all that good right now. Seemed like the spirit of Bigra was starting to take effect. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. All of a sudden, Saint's face took a stark change. There was a mysterious feeling, a strange sensation. Saint had suddenly realized that there was this mystifying power that was working at occupying his heart and mind. How could this be? Why is it like this? Saint's face took a huge turn. In this very moment, he realized that his inner heart had already been occupied by that mysterious feeling. For someone like Saint whose heart was firm as a rock, there was nothing that could destroy it. However, at this moment, even if his heart were as resolute as a boulder, it could not stop crumbling down as well. ****, what have you done to me? Why is this happening? Saint bellowed out with a menacing expression. Suddenly, he looked extremely terrible as though he was having a duel with that energy that was surging within his body. FCK. This was the only feeling that Saint was experiencing right now as his groin began to expand out rapidly. It had been a long time since Saint felt such sensations in this body part of his. Ever since he had turned into an utmost being, Saint had always been a haughty and unreachable existence, who never ever bothered with anyone from the female gender. Yet at this very moment, his heart was burning with an endless lust. How could this be? Saint had suddenly realized that the object at his groin was now upright and ready to pierce the heavens, as though it was a pillar that could hold up an entire world. Huff! A deep voice growled out from Saint's mouth. All of a sudden, his face was extremely flushed. Those initially frightening eyes of his were even more horrifying to look at right now. The gaze that was permeating out from those eyes seemed as though they were going to ravage any single thing they took in. I'm going to FCK you to death. Between the world right now, the only living being present was Lin Fan. And, when the desires of Saint were dragged out by the spirit of Bigra, his eyes were locked onto Lin Fan at that very moment. Lin Fan was working hard at cultivating the ancient saint sacrificial altar. When he sensed this penetrative gaze, his body could not help but shudder out with a bad feeling. Holy FCK, this guy's eyes, they look as though they're going to eat me up. Lin Fan had suddenly realized that he seemed to be the only person around here right now. And, when one's desires were carved out by the spirit of Bigra, there were only two choices left. The first choice was to find a living being before poking them furiously. And, if they were unable to find a living being, the second choice led to them to FCK the Great Mother Nature. And with the current situation in this place where he was the only one present, he was naturally the target that was locked on by Saint. At this moment, Lin Fan's anus gave a tight clench as his nuts started hurting. With this deranged saint in front of him, he truly did not know if he could defend against him at all. The only thought that Lin Fan had right now was to hide within the heaven and earth smelt. Yet, that wasn't a good solution either. Now that he was at the critical moment of cultivating this ancient saint sacrificial altar, was he to really just give it up just like this? All of a sudden, Lin Fan's mind tinkered as he thought up of a plan. The moment this idea blossomed in his mind, it couldn't disappear any longer. I am an utmost being of the ancient race. How can I possibly be entertaining such thoughts? While Saint's heart was still lucid, his actions were vulgar. Lin Fan focused his attention and expressed his exasperation. Seemed like he could only give it a shot. Big ancient demon, come on out. Suddenly, in order to prevent himself from being the target of poking, Lin Fan released the big ancient demon from his paradise entirely. Master, is there anything you're summoning me for? The big ancient demon asked in a surprised manner. It's nothing much. No matter what, you've got to help me defend against the attack later. Lin Fan waved his hand and pointed over at the frenzied saint who was lunging over. When the big ancient demon caught sight of the scene ahead, he did not know what was going on at first. However, his face suddenly changed. Master, it's too late now. Seems like it'll be tough on you this time around. Bigra, go forth and unleash all the desires within the big ancient demon. Lin Fan did not have to hesitate as he came up with this, best, solution instantly. Chapter 765, this image quality is way too low. Chapter 765, this image quality is way too low. Master, you can't do this to me. How can I, as the big ancient demon, do something as such with that fella? The big ancient demon was on the brink of tears right now. He yelled out, hoping that Lin Fan would change his mind. Oh, my dear demon boy. Now's the time for you to show your worth. Unless, you wish for your master to take it on himself, Lin Fan rolled his eyes helplessly. In Lin Fan's opinion, given the battle power of the big ancient demon, the winner wasn't even determined just yet. Who knew if the big ancient demon might just go in a frenzy and suppress that fella under him instead? Now, that would be tyrannical. The big ancient demon looked at Lin Fan, then at that rapidly chasing utmost being. He could not help but feel sorrow in his heart. Was he going to lose his virginity at this place right now? No, absolutely not. He was the big ancient demon. How could he let that guy bully him? Even if anyone had to be bullied, he should be the one bullying the other guy. All of a sudden, the big ancient demon felt the unstoppable amount of energy gushing through his body, breaking through the barriers of his heart and bringing forth his inner self. Arg, the big ancient demon yelled out as that boundless yell rang through the world. Seems like the time is now. The big ancient demon is not one to be trifled with. Looking at the situation before him, Lin Fan was elated. When Saint caught sight of how that darned human had released the big ancient demon, his heart could not help but freeze up a little. And, when he saw the raging object at the groin of the big ancient demon, that was absolutely intolerable. Beast, you're a beast. Saint wanted to stop himself. However, he found out that there was nothing he could do. When he caught sight of that massive body of the big ancient demon, he even had a sense of excitement trickling through his heart. This was something absolutely horrifying for Saint. Bam! An explosion boomed out. Lin Fan did not even have to see to know that the big ancient demon had clashed with Saint. As for how the situation was turning out, Lin Fan did not want to pay attention. But, it was evident that there would be a tragedy awaiting one side. The only question was whether it would be Saint or the big ancient demon. Everything, every single thing, could only depend on fate right now. This ancient saint sacrificial altar is really strong indeed. To think that the weapon spirit within would still be resisting. However, I must definitely get my hands on this ancient saint sacrificial altar, no matter what it takes. If I can cultivate this ancient saint sacrificial altar, I may even have a chance to comprehend through it a method to get down to the lower world. The very reason why Lin Fan was so bent on getting his hands on this ancient saint's sacrificial altar was that he wanted to use it to get down to the lower world. Since the ancient saint's sacrificial altar was able to receive sacrifices from all of the different worlds before returning some benefits for those worlds, it naturally meant that it could break through the barriers of the infinite worlds. If Lin Fan could comprehend how to do so, that would save him a whole lot of trouble. Master, save me, this guy wants to do me. Just as Lin Fan was trying his best at cultivating the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, the cries of the big ancient demon yelped out. This was a tragic cry as though he was enduring some unspeakable pain. My dear demon boy, if he wants to do you, you should try your best to do him back. What use is that huge hulking body of yours for? Lin Fan turned around to see Saint sprawled on the back of the big ancient demon's body, and was pounding up and down like a pile driver. However, his face was flushed entirely red as though he couldn't find the correct position of entry after all this time. Aiya, you dog sh*t. How dare you cause my hind legs such terrible pain with that hard object of yours? The thighs of the big ancient demon were now poked so badly they were red and sore by now. With an ominous glow, he made a huge flip and pinned Saint onto the ground. You beast, how dare you humiliate your demon daddy? It's time for daddy's turn. The big ancient demon's face was entirely red as he exerted all his force and switched positions with Saint. There was even a feeling of the commoners revolting against the royalty at this point. Ah, Saint wailed out in anguish. Even though his body had betrayed him right now, his heart was still burning with rage. He was an utmost being of the ancient race. How could he allow something like this to happen? But, under the intense manly aura of the big ancient demon, Saint gradually lost himself within it. That mighty arm of the big ancient demon that was wrapping itself around him with its heated perspiration pouring down his body caused Saint's entire body to get wet right now. Holy FCK, this Mother Sea King scene is way too piercing to watch. When Lin Fan caught sight of this, he was entirely stumped. Was this even watchable for humans? How could Saint give off such a shameful expression? Haha, Saint, are you FC King feeling good now? The big ancient demon held out in pleasure as that hulking body of his expanded furiously. Lin Fan did not want to see any more. He had truly admitted defeat this time around. To think that he would have to watch such an indecent scene before him. Why is there still a Samsung race being? At this moment, Lin Fan realized that there was still a single Samsung race being that was standing there foolishly within his paradise. He could not help but grin out. Haha, not bad, not bad. Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy as he pulled out the Samsung race being. Samsung race being, even though your self-destruction powers are decent, I want you to make use of your image broadcast function now. Now that the Samsung race being had long been reformed by Lin Fan, he naturally obeyed Lin Fan's every whim and order. Without waiting, thousands of light spots flew out of him and scattered out in all directions. For every good story, there had to be a good title. Lin Fan thought for a moment before determining the title. The Great Battle Between the Big Ancient Demon and the Utmost Being of the Ancient Race. High definition, uncensored, 360 degrees, no dead angle live broadcast. Shing, the void rippled out as those light spots dusted out into the entire world. Lin Fan grabbed onto one of the light spots that started its live broadcast instantly. FCK, this image quality is way too shitty. But forget it, at least it's watchable. Even though the explosive power of the Samsung race beings was strong, their image broadcast wasn't clear at all. It was just barely watchable. The Namo Saint Emperor and the others had since run off a long way. Check it out, these light spots. When the Namo Saint Emperor caught sight of the light spots, he grabbed one of them in his hands before crushing it. At that moment, an image appeared along with a series of sounds. Holy FCK, what the FCK is that lad doing? Within the image, Lin Fan was working hard at cultivating the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. And not too far away from him, there were two bodies meshing together in a flesh struggle. Puke. The moment the female empress caught sight of this, she could not help but puke out in shame. Lowly, despicable, how could they be doing something like this? The big ancient demon was really ugly to begin with. And, the utmost being of the ancient race was hideous to the max as well. And now that these two disgustingly ugly fellas were hugging together, this was an image of mass destruction. Across the world, all the living beings came into contact with these light spots. The utmost being of the ancient race was the most feared existence in their hearts. However, when they saw the title, they were filled with an immense curiosity. What does high definition uncensored mean? And, what's this 360 degrees no dead angle live broadcast all about? Out of inquisitiveness, everyone opened up the image. Puke, how could this be? I've got thousands of years of cultivation under me. But this single image has managed to break me. I can't bear with it anymore. No more please. When countless of living beings caught sight of that image, their eyes were instacled. They even spat out a mouthful of blood involuntarily from their bodies. However, for the rest of the living beings, this was simply way too exciting. Haha, this is an emotional video. That's the utmost being saint of the ancient race. To think that even he would have such a side to him. But who in the world is that ugly warrior fighting him? To think that he would have such guts. That's the Mother *C King Human King. The Mother *C King Human King is starting to make his rounds on the utmost beings. Vice Party Leader, hurry up and come take a look. Isn't that our party leader? Holy FCK. A single look at this image and one would definitely know that it is from the Samsung race. High definition my fart, the whole video is practically blurry. Bloody hell, why isn't there a Huawei race being or Xiaomi race being around? To think that we can't even enjoy such a majestic image in its fullest glory. What a pity. Chapter 766, Heaven's Will. Chapter 766, Heaven's Will. Save me. At this moment, the weapon spirit of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar shrieked out intensely. However, the sounds of its shrieks were getting softer by the moment as though they could disappear at any time. Weapon spirit, no matter how you call for help, it's all going to be useless. Just get cultivated by me obediently. Lin Fan clapped his hands together as a boundless amount of power surged in. The word, cultivation, jerked intensely before giving off a final bright gleam. The Heaven and Earth Sutra was an unparalleled utmost treasure that holds many secrets within it. Even up till now, Lin Fan had probably only scraped at its surface, and was unable to utilize it to its full potential. If he wanted to fully control the Heaven and Earth Sutra, he would have to be a divine celestial level 10, eternal God state being at the very least. At that time, perhaps he might be able to use all the text characters with a single thought. Otherwise, if he attempted that right now, he would undoubtedly just be seeking death, as he would get sapped into a dried-up corpse in the blink of an eye. The Heaven and Earth Sutra had 108 words to it. Every single word possessed all living beings and carried with it an incredible amount of profound secrets. If one had enough powers to sustain them, the 108 words would then instantly suppress and turn into all sorts of mysterious text characters. By then, even if it were an utmost being of the ancient race, they could probably be killed on the spot instantly. Cultivate, Lin Fan hollered out as his connection with the ancient saint's sacrificial altar got more mysterious with time. In fact, he was already starting to get some control over it. Saint was entirely crazed at this moment. He knew that the ancient saint's sacrificial altar had left him by now. Even though he was infuriated by that, he was actually feeling that there was nothing more important than what he was doing right now. Ding! Congratulations on subduing the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. Ancient saint's sacrificial altar connects to the infinite worlds. The sacrifices of the infinite worlds shall seek out everything. And vel be in .c ohm. Ding! System conducting in-depth analysis of ancient saint's sacrificial altar. No, Saint had entirely lost every last bit of connection with the ancient saint's sacrificial altar right now, and hence yelled out in his heart. However, it was as though this body of his was being controlled by something. The only thing he could do right now was engage in these acts together with the big ancient demon. All the living beings who were watching this live broadcast could not understand what was going on right now. But, the feeling of them watching this battle between the utmost being of the ancient race and that huge rock ass was pretty intense. This was the collision of power against power, something that went against the laws of mechanical physics. For many of those beings of the thousands of races, their hundreds and thousands of years of cultivation had just crumbled down in the blink of an eye. After all, everything before them was way too piercing for their hearts. Just who in the world is this young man? How could he have such capabilities that even an utmost being of the ancient race was toyed in his hands? While there were many people who did not know of Lin Fan, there were also quite a number of people who knew of him. This was the Mother *C King Human King, an existence revered by the masses. This was the party leader of the Revolutionary Army, an existence hated by many parties in the guarded ground. Yet at this very moment, everyone held their breaths. That was because the sight before them was something they were really concerned about. They did not know how things would play out from this. Is that the power possessed by the ancient saint's sacrificial altar? All of a sudden, Lin Fan could feel countless threads shooting out from the ancient saint's sacrificial altar and wrapping themselves around him. These threads seeped into the void as though they were connected to larger worlds one after another. In fact, it seemed as though some of the powerful beings from those other worlds were unable to withstand the ancient saint's sacrificial altar as they started obeying its commands. An example of that was the blood world. Boom! Lin Fan didn't have the luxury of time to think any further when the void trembled out. His face was startled as an uneasy feeling made its way up his head. While this energy wasn't all that strong, it was really ancient. Put down the ancient saint's sacrificial altar or you shall die. A radiant voice rang out from somewhere within the void. One was unable to determine the gender of this voice as though it was some mixed-up robotic voice. There was even a vicissitude and an ancient feeling to it. When the voice descended from the void, Lin Fan could only feel his heart rattle. This was a formidable aura as though one had to bow down to it. The heavens will of the ancient saint world. Through the broadcast of the Samsung race, Feng Qingzi's face changed. The ancient saint's sacrificial altar is the treasure of the heavens will. Now that this lad has forcefully cultivated it, he must have alerted the heavens will about it directly. This is bad, things are going to get complicated. Feng Qingzi had not expected things to turn out like this and his heart tightened. Even if they were to head up to help him, it would be all too late. Didn't you say that the heavens will of the ancient saint world was still deep in slumber? Why would it come out? Namo Saint Emperor asked in astonishment. As only a part of the ancient saint world's heavens will is awakened, it shouldn't appear in theory. However, now that the lad has forcefully cultivated the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, how could the heavens will endure that? Does this mean the lad is dead for sure? When Saint was in that bad position, they had thought that Lin Fan would be able to overturn the tides and suppress the former entirely. But to think that things would change as such, this was something that was too sudden for them to react to. You are the heavens will of the ancient saint world. Lin Fan looked up at the void. Even though there was no reaction, Lin Fan knew that the heavens will was looking at him. Even Lin Fan was feeling his nuts hurting at this moment. He hadn't thought that things would come to this. Steady up, you have to stay firm. Lin Fan gathered his courage secretly. He had to try to delay time and seize the opportunity to run away. What sort of an existence was the heavens will? Now that he had forcefully cultivated the treasure from this guy, how could he just stand here wasting time talking to him? If it were him in the heavens will shoes, he would definitely rush out at first notice and come forth with a flurry of punches. But right now, the heavens will was only threatening him instead of coming forth. But, didn't this just mean that it was inconvenient for the heavens will to come out right now? In order to test out this theory, Lin Fan had to try some things out. Far across in the distance, the big ancient demon had Saint pinned under him. That was a really messy scene right now. By now, this Saint could have been considered to be defeated by him. He had to take this guy away with him no matter what. If he could kill him, that would be one big chunk of experience points. Sneakily and stealthily, Lin Fan came to the side of the big ancient demon. He then tossed his robes and kept them into his paradise. Once they entered the paradise, Lin Fan suppressed Saint immediately. Even though there was no more spirit chi within his paradise right now, with the combined efforts of his mythical parasol tree and all the living beings within it, suppressing him wasn't an issue. HMPH. At this moment, a thunderous explosion boomed out. The heavens will was angered right now. To think that this ant-like existence would dare to try and forcefully steal away an utmost being from his very nose. And, this was not even including that ancient saint's sacrificial altar. Retreat. Without thinking twice, Lin Fan bolted off into the distance. With his current strength, even a single utmost being could already have him half dead, so it was needless to even consider fighting the heavens will. Even though Lin Fan wasn't all too certain whether the heavens will could strike out, for safety's sake, Lin Fan still decided to sprint as quickly as he could first. You're courting death, the heavens will bellowed out. Instantly, the entire sky changed. Lightning flashed around as cyclones whirled out. There was even a formless gigantic hand that tore out of the void and was suppressing the world around the area forcefully. Lin Fan jerked his head back and his soul was nearly shot out of him. Which FCKER in the world said that the heavens will couldn't do anything? The amount of powers that were coming forth was absolutely frightening the SH*T out of him. Lin Fan dove into the void. However, a boundless amount of power exploded out from within as though the entire void nearby had broken down. Instantly, Lin Fan's body dropped out from the void, while a tremendous amount of power pressed itself down harshly onto his body. He was slapped down to the ground instantaneously. Holy FCK, this guy is giving no chances at all. Chapter 767, Plentiful Rewards. Chapter 767, Plentiful Rewards. Your heavens will have yet to awaken entirely. Hence, I did not wish to use up too much power. But, to think that a damned human such as yourself would dare to run. If that's the case, I can only suppress you entirely then. The voice was boundless and had a metallic sound to it. It was eternal, foreign, and vicissitudinous. But, the voice alone had one knowing that they had better not underestimate this. Seems like I've really thought too simply of it. This heavens will really can move. The reason for it not taking any action at all was because it hadn't woken up completely just yet. But, what should I do now? Lin Fan reared his head into the void. Right now, there was a boundless amount of power surging through the void. This power was extremely huge in magnitude, something not to be scoffed at. Lin Fan could feel himself being locked on by the heaven's will. There was no room for him to run at all. Spit, spit, that attack just now had Lin Fan eating an entire mouthful of mud. Heaven's will, don't you go overboard now. Any powerful being can get their hands on treasures. Since I've gotten my hands on it, that means that it has an affinity with me. As the heavens will of the ancient saint world, how can you be so petty? Lin Fan's eyes were fluttering around, trying to think of a good way to escape out of this place directly. However, for a moment or so, he could not come up with anything good at all. Even though the heavens will had yet to wake up entirely, given the current situation, it still wasn't something that Lin Fan could deal with at all. No, he had to think up of a good way now. Otherwise, he would really have to die here. The ancient saint's sacrificial altar isn't something that someone like you can get a share of. Hand it over right now. The voice of the heavens will boomed out like thunder. In fact, Lin Fan could even feel a momentous surge of energy coming from the unknowns that was trying to grab at the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. However, when this surge of energy entered Lin Fan's body, it was devoured by the system immediately. November LBJNN. The moment the heavens will discovered that his energy that he had sent into this human has eaten up by some other mysterious power, he was startled. As for Lin Fan, he scoffed at the thought of this heavens will trying to snatch away something from him. This guy didn't know that yours truly had a system. In the past, there was someone who had wanted to devour yours truly. In a moment of carelessness, he was FCKED over by the system instead. It was needless for Lin Fan to elaborate on the mystifying uses of the system anymore. To think that this human would possess a power as such within his body. But, even if that's the case, no one is going to be able to save you. The might of the heavens will crash down, and the entire world began to tremble. As for those living beings watching the live broadcast, they suddenly realized that the image had come to a stop. Gosh, are they still going to let us watch or what? Man, I've never hated the Samsung race as much as today. That's right, they were already hated for their self-destructing powers. And now, they cut off the broadcast right in the middle of the action. Did they have any ethics at all? But, that thing just now, wasn't that the heavens will? If the heavens will of the ancient saint world was going to wake up, wouldn't it mean that we're all dead meat? It can't be, right? What are we to do? We don't even have a broadcast to watch from right now. This is making me really anxious. All the beings of the thousands of races were panicking, and did not know what to do right now. What should we do? The aura that was given off by the heavens will earlier on was something that was practically invincible. Once it is to awaken completely, who else in the world could control it? The face of the female empress was stern right now as she could not help but worry over it. Now's not the time to think about that. That lad is probably going to be in danger. It's practically impossible for him to try and escape from the grasp of the heavens will. Namo Saint Emperor was feeling for the first time in his life that he truly did not know what to do any longer. Go, hurry up and go to the guarded ground. Now that the heavens will is awakening, it means that the infinite worlds are going to open up soon as well. By that time, this world will change entirely. Feng Qingzi's expression was grim. This disciple of mine is going to be all right. I have faith in him. Oi, old man Feng, no matter what, he's your disciple. Are you going to leave him be just like that? Namo Saint Emperor was stunned and somewhat exasperated. It's precisely because he's my disciple that he has to undergo tougher training. Earlier on, I gave a telling of his fortune with my fingers. This disciple of mine is going to do great things. He will not fall here. Hence, we don't have to worry. Let us leave. Feng Qingzi was lying with a straight face as though he had just told the truth. However, Feng Qingzi did indeed try to predict Lin Fan's fortune with his fingers before. But, no matter how he tried, he couldn't predict anything at all. It was as though there was a thin veil that was shielding Lin Fan's fate from being seen through within this world. Even when Feng Qingzi used up every last bit of his milk-sucking strength, he couldn't tell Jack's tea. With that, his eventual conclusion was that this disciple of his was going to be alright. As for heading over to rescue him and whatnot, Feng Qingzi did entertain some of those thoughts before. But, he knocked them off as quickly as they came. After all, him heading there was as good as not heading there at all, as it would hardly make a difference. At this moment, Lin Fan could truly feel his nuts hurting. Now that he had FCKED up a powerful being, another one was here. This was really one hell of a ball F***ck for him. Did he really have a face to be taunted at constantly? No matter where he went, he would be taunted by others. They left him with no chance at all. Seems like this is the only way then. Lin Fan cast his gaze at Saint, who was being suppressed within his paradise. Now that the powers within his body had been lost by more than half and his paradise was equally empty, Lin Fan didn't even have the capabilities to fight back fully. But, if he were to slay Saint here, he might gain a single strand of hope. Saint, my apologies, but yours truly has no choice but to FCK you to death then. Lin Fan was neither happy nor sad. However, his face did let out a look of shyness. It was as though he was feeling embarrassed for killing Saint right after he had suppressed him. Within the paradise, a sorrowful wail rang out within the entire place. Right now, Saint had recovered from Bigra. But, when he recalled everything that had just happened, his heart felt as though it was about to break down. To think that as a mighty and grand utmost being, he would have such things done to him by this beast. You dogs *T, let go of me. Now that the heaven's will is here, I'll see how you're going to defend against that. Saint yelled out while struggling. Shut up. Not only was he suppressed down by the mythical parasol tree, the big ancient demon was suppressing him as well. Looking at how insolently Saint was acting, the big ancient demon could not bear with it anymore and gave him one tight slap. The slap had Saint entirely stumped as though he was dealt a major blow. Why you? Right now, other than Lin Fan, the one that Saint hated the most within his heart was none other than this big ancient demon. He would never ever forget the scene of him being pinned down by this big ancient demon. You, master, are we going to FCK him to death? The big ancient demon was a heartless fella as well. He had evidently gone through a furious round of pumping with this Saint, and now, he was entirely disregarding his existence. Yes, kill him. Suddenly, the tree branches of the mythical parasol tree pierced through into the body of Saint and sucked up his powers. Heaven's will, save me please. At this moment, Saint was like a fish on a chopping board, unable to fight back at all. Ding, congratulations on killing utmost being Saint of the ancient race. Ding, experience points gained, countless. Ding, congratulations on leveling up. Ding, cultivation state. Divine Celestial Level 9, 8 Desolates United State. Obtained. Eternal God Seat 1. Obtained. 1 trillion Shenyang pills. Obtained. 18 Dao weapons. At this instant, the notifications from the system rang out relentlessly. Lin Fan's heart was pounding furiously from it as well. As an utmost being of the ancient race, the experience points being given off by Saint were naturally astronomical. And not only that, there were plenty of treasures. Paradise, essence spirit, law, universal elixir. All of those were exploited by Lin Fan to strengthen his own body. He could feel as though his body was surging through with an unlimited amount of power. And, the moment he stepped into the 8 Desolates United State, Lin Fan could feel his mastery of the universe getting stronger than before. It was as though HE was the heaven, and HE was the earth. Everything that happened between the universe seemed to be under his complete control. Chapter 768. This is just taking my old life. Chapter 768. This is just taking my old life. Power. This was unbridled power. Lin Fan could only feel as though his body was in possession of the strongest power in the world right now. In life, there were always the 3 great delusions. 1. I have absolute power. 2. I am stronger than he is. 3. I can defeat him. And right now, Lin Fan was in possession of the first of the 3 great delusions, I have absolute power. To be honest, the power that Lin Fan possessed was indeed pretty formidable. And, it was even more so now that he had killed the utmost being Saint. But, in the eyes of the heavens will, Lin Fan was still nothing but a mere ant. Haha, so what if you're the heavens, will? Yours truly's powers have now recovered. Even if I were to fight you head on, it wouldn't be an issue. At the most, Lin Fan howled out wildly as he leapt out of his paradise and proclaimed proudly. But, when he was speaking halfway, he was stumped by the entire scene before him. The moment Lin Fan leapt out of his paradise, he felt pairs of eyes flushing towards him in unison. You guys. At this point, Lin Fan was pretty flabbergasted, unable to believe everyone he was seeing right before him. 1 head, 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads. By the time he was done counting, he found that there were 5 ancient race beings. The auras of these ancient race beings were extremely profound and chilling to the bone. These auras were full of metal, and their ferocious momentum seemed as though they could destroy anything before them. Who is this person, Your Excellency, Heaven's will? Is this the human you were referring to? Where has Saint gone to? Why can't I sense his aura at all? HMPH. To think that Saint would have kept the ancient saint's sacrificial altar for himself. Damn that guy. November LBJNN. Lin Fan did not know when these ancient race beings arrived. However, without guessing, he could tell that these were the utmost beings. Out of the 8 utmost beings of the ancient race, Lin Fan had only seen 3. To think that the remaining 5 would appear here as well. To Lin Fan, this was absolutely gut-smashing. As the 5 utmost beings stood upright in the void, the tremendous aura that was given off by them was causing the entire world to quake. The sky was changing colors continuously. Suppress that human. The heavens will finally spoke up as though he was giving off an order. Yes. Without hesitating, the 5 utmost beings of the ancient race nodded their heads. To the heavens' will, these utmost beings were nothing more special than any other ancient race being. They bore no distinction at all. After all, he was the one who had crafted all of them out. Even the utmost beings were no exception. This mother CKER. Lin Fan was petrified as shit. To think that things would turn out as such. The moment he came out, he met so many ancient race utmost beings. This was giving him no FC King chance at all. A sense of danger surged itself right into the depths of his heart. Even now that Lin Fan's strength had grown, these 5 utmost beings of the ancient race were like gigantic mountains that seemed to be crushing onto him. He didn't even have any chance of fighting back at all. It's been a long time since I've last seen a human. That's right, seems like Saint must have been killed by this human. That piece of trash, to think that he would die in the hands of a human. This is an utter humiliation for the ancient race. Could the ancient saint's sacrificial altar be in the hands of this human? One by one, the utmost beings of the ancient race were sizing up Lin Fan with scrutiny. The gaze that was permeated through their eyes seemed as though they were going to devour Lin Fan entirely. Human, take the ancient saint's sacrificial altar out. One of the utmost beings had a humongous body just like that of a heaven-piercing giant. When that colossal body stepped foot on the void, it gave off a repressing feeling that was unmatched. Generating the clanking sound like that of metal, the amount of pressure given off by him was entirely irresistible. FCK, how in the world did these guys come about? Could all of them have been attracted here by the ancient saint's sacrificial altar? Lin Fan was startled in his heart, wondering when these ancient race beings made their way here. But, Lin Fan garnered that the reason for all of them gathering here should be all the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. At the start, Lin Fan had yet to fully comprehend the importance of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. But after cultivating it, he knew of its true powers. No matter who it was that obtained it, it would definitely bring for them an immense amount of benefits. The only reason why Saint brought it out was because he was pushed to his wit's end and had no other way but to use it and fight with all he had. As for the other utmost beings of the ancient race, this was a source of energy that they were extremely sensitive to. The moment they felt the aura of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, they headed over from wherever they were. Ancient saint's sacrificial altar. What ancient saint's sacrificial altar? I've got no idea. Lin Fan acted dumb and shook his head furiously. Lin Fan felt that the heavens were playing a godlike joke on him. First, they gave him an infinite amount of hope, only for him to realize at the very end of it all that it was nothing but a scam. It was scam that would not even compensate him if he were to die because of it. After obtaining the treasure, he thought that he would definitely have his powers skyrocket from there on. But, given the current situation, that was just courting death for him. 5 utmost beings of the ancient race. Even if he were to take his life out to pit it against them, he wouldn't even be their match. Everyone, why are we wasting our breath on him? Let us just take him down and search his entire soul afterward to make him spit everything out. One of the utmost beings remarked cruelly. The moment Lin Fan heard this, he exploded. Wasn't this guy way too savage? What are you guys doing? Yes, the ancient saint's sacrificial altar is in my hands. What are you guys trying to do? Lin Fan yelled out, feeling extremely helpless in his heart. These guys really wanted his damn life. If 5 utmost beings of the ancient race were to strike out together, even a powerful being who had obtained an eternal god seat would definitely perish instantly. Why does my life have to be this tragic? At this moment, Lin Fan could only feel an overwhelming sadness in his heart. Ever since he had started on his path, nothing seemed to go by his way at all. Each time he got to the most important parts, there would always be some hiccups of sorts. Now that he had finally suppressed an utmost being of the ancient race, Lin Fan felt as though he had reached the peak of his life. But, to think that the heavens would appear instead. Initially, Lin Fan had thought of scamming the heavens a little and finding a way to escape. But, the moment he came out of his paradise, there was a group of utmost beings awaiting him out of nowhere. It would still be okay if it were just one of them. But what, to think that 5 of them would appear. This was just bloody trying to take this old life of his. Run, this thought flashed through Lin Fan's mind. He was already prepared for it. PSHEW. Instantly, Lin Fan bolted off 1,000 miles, wanting to get out of this place. So near, yet so far has already been mastered by yours truly to a certain degree of proficiency. There should be no issues in running. Lin Fan was full of confidence towards his so near, yet so far. However, the moment he dove into the void, the entire world seemed as though it was firming up. It seemed as though there were layers after layers of membrane that was blocking his path. This is just leaving me with no hope entirely. Lin Fan's face took a turn for the worse as he was squeezed out of the void. Human, you will never escape. Hand over the ancient saint's sacrificial altar obediently, and we may just let you have an easy death. Why are we still wasting our breath on this human seriously? Just kill him outright. That's right, the heavens will is already enraged. As representatives of the heavens will, how can we allow him to continue acting so insolently? Kill. All of a sudden, the heaven and earth quaked as the 5 utmost beings raised their hands instantly. An immensely frightening power appeared all of a sudden, enclosing Lin Fan within it. Under the formidable might of this power, Lin Fan's face changed. There was a very high possibility that he would be minced to death under this monstrous power here. There wasn't even a single strand of hope at all. Chapter 769. This couldn't have been timelier. Chapter 769. This couldn't have been timelier. A bedazzling godly radiance shone out in all directions. The entire world was now completely filled with the powers of the 5 utmost beings. While each of their powers might differ individually, there was one thing that was the same: each of these 5 powers were formidably matchless. There was no room for anyone to fight back at all. Even a dog knows to scale a wall when it's pushed to a dead end, let alone yours truly. Since the bunch of you dogs *ts dare to join hands so shamelessly, it's time for yours truly to fight it out fully with you guys. Ha ha ha, what do you have to fight with, human? Just wait for your death obediently. The 5 utmost beings weren't concerned about Lin Fan in the slightest bit. As they raised their hands, the entire world was suppressed down. In their eyes, the human was nothing more than an ant who had no chance of making a comeback. Ha! Lin Fan roared out loudly as his powers rumbled, forming a gigantic colossal dragon of power that wrapped itself around him. This colossal dragon of power was similar to a real colossal dragon, with well-defined scales that were emitting a ghastly glow. 9 heavens 10 earths. Lin Fan bellowed out as the entire world trembled. An indescribable aura reached all the way to the boundaries of the sky. To think that this human would have capabilities of this level. The 5 utmost beings were powerful beings who had battled through the heavens and earth. Therefore, they were really sensitive to the reverberations of power ripples. Now that Lin Fan had yelled out the 4 words, the world started showing all sorts of weird phenomenon. There was an aura as though he reigned supreme across the entire world, seeming like a sharp blade unsheathed. It pierced through the void and bolted out towards the 5 utmost beings. You guys have thoroughly angered me. Today, I'm going to unleash my entire lifetime's learnings to kill all of you. Lin Fan bellowed out as his aura rose intensely. His palms started churning with powers as he pointed a single finger up to the heavens and another finger down to the earth. Oh, lifetime's learnings. Haha, this is pretty interesting now. The utmost beings chuckled out, evidently not threatened by Lin Fan in the least bit. Lin Fan looked at the 5 utmost beings and could not help but gulp down his saliva. Whether or not it succeeded depend on this next move of his. Infinite World Supreme Descending Dragons of the 18 Flying Heavens and FC King Earth. In a single breath, Lin Fan came up with a long-ass name such that at the end, he didn't even know what sort of a shit name he had given to this skill. Go to hell. Boom! Lin Fan slapped out with both hands as the boundless power gathered into a dragon and roared out. The heavenly, blinding beam of light that was emitted was more glaring than anything else could be. It seemed as though the entire world was drowned within this flash of dazzling radiance. Ha ha, to think that even with the 5 of us utmost beings right here, there would be a living being in this world who would dare to act so impudently. This is something that has never ever happened before. The 5 utmost beings burst out laughing wildly. They were intent on messing the other party up real good. Run! There was no scope of hesitation, especially now that the entire world was filled with this blinding light that one couldn't peer through it at all. This was the best time for it. If Lin Fan still did not seize this opportunity to run off, he would be truly a doomed. Now that there were 5 utmost beings present, what did he even have to fight them with? Even if he were to wear his underwear inside out, he couldn't FCK them up. Bam! For the 5 utmost beings, Lin Fan's attack was nothing more than child's play. It posed no challenge at all to them. Ha ha ha, and this is what you meant by your lifetime's learning? Oh, you of the puny human race. You're puny indeed. Where's he? All of the utmost beings were laughing out as though they were tickled badly by this human's claim of his lifetime's learning. But, in the blink of an eye, they realized that the human was no more before them. We've been tricked. That human is way too despicable. To think that he would seize the opportunity to run. Huh, how did things come to this? We've already sealed up the void nearby. There's no way he should be able to get out at all. The aura of that human disappeared all of a sudden. Where could he have gone to? And right before the faces of these utmost beings of the ancient race, Lin Fan was in stealth mode right now. He didn't even dare to breathe out heavily, afraid of attracting the attention of the other side and ending up being sent to the heavens with a flurry of fists. You can't see me. You can't see me, Lin Fan prayed in his heart. This time around, everything that had happened was too sudden for him to react to it. This was really way too FCKED up a situation. If one were to talk about Cruel and Saint's appearances earlier on, then so be it. After all, he had still managed to suppress them entirely after spending up a huge A*S load of effort. By any normal storyline, things should have come to a perfect ending there. But, of all ridiculous things that could happen, the heavens will appeared. How bloody strong was the heavens will? As long as one wasn't stupid, they'd have an inkling at least. But, that wasn't even the worst of it all. Out of nowhere, 5 utmost beings suddenly spouted out into the mix. And, it seemed as though they were pumped with chicken's blood, as they wanted to FCK Lin Fan up the moment they saw him. This was giving Lin Fan a huge load of pressure. Now that he had finally caught a rare opportunity to hide himself, how could he allow himself to be caught by these utmost beings of the ancient race? This was a situation where he would die 10 times out of 10. However, because of this unparalleled intellect of his, he had managed to find a way of life out of 10 death situations. Just where in the world has that ant gone to? The 5 utmost beings were extremely bewildered right now. They did not know just where in the world this ant-like being had disappeared to. One of the utmost beings with a hulky body stood forth all of a sudden. Those deep profound eyes of his let out a golden glow, which swept through the entire place before dissipating. There's really no trace of that human in this entire place. The brows of that utmost being furrowed, evidently unable to accept the fact that a single ant-like human could possibly escape from their grasps. Huff. Lin Fan took a deep breath. That was close. When the utmost being was scanning the entire place, he was almost afraid that he might be found out. But, based on the situation right now, it seemed like the other party hadn't noticed his existence at all. Haha, the system is the system indeed. To think that even an utmost being will not be able to detect the hidden aura of my stealth mode. Seems like it was the right move for me to cultivate this stealth move back in the past. How many times have I made it out of death's jaws just based on this skill alone? November LBJNN. You worthless bunch of pigs, come out. But, Lin Fan hadn't cheered for long when that bright voice boomed out and caused the entire void to tremble. The voice was like a sharp blade that was slicing up the void layer by layer. In the blink of an eye, Lin Fan was startled. These sharp blades that were slicing up the void had somehow come close to appearing right in Lin Fan's face all of a sudden. The heavens will has discovered me. Lin Fan's body flashed nimbly as he dodged out of the void. Facing the 5 utmost beings, he felt as though he was about to break down. Damn it, seems like that human was here all this while. Just what sort of a skill was that for him to be able to hide his aura so deeply and avoid our detection? Once we take him down later, we'll have to force that skill out of him. Since he killed Saint, he must have obtained all of Saint's treasures. As long as we kill him, we can get all of it. All of a sudden, thousands of fists were rained out by the 5 utmost beings. In case of powerful beings of this level, any single fist could shatter an entire world on its own. Seems like I can only give it a shot at fighting them. If I don't, there wouldn't be any bit of chance left. I shall reign supreme over 8 desolates. With that single move, all of his martial arts converged into a single point. With the system, experience points were the only thing required for Lin Fan to level up. However, Lin Fan has also stolen a bunch of essence, spirit, and vitality from powerful beings that he has killed. As such, the powers of his foundation had reached a really berserk state as well. Within the same cultivation state, he could be considered as an invincible existence. It wouldn't be an issue for him to cross level gaps and fight. Lin Fan knew that this single strike of his which possessed all of his powers couldn't possibly hold back the utmost beings of the ancient race. Do I really have to depend on the Heaven and Earth Sutra at this point as well? Unless there was no other way out, Lin Fan did not want to use it. However, after killing Saint, Lin Fan had obtained 1 trillion Shengyang pills. This was undoubtedly a joyous achievement worth celebrating. But just at this moment, a horrifying amount of power pierced through towards him. Lin Fan grimaced. This power was unstoppable. If he didn't use the Heaven and Earth Sutra, he might truly not be able to defend against this. Ding. System has analyzed the ancient saint's sacrificial altar successfully. Ding. New function obtained. Burn up 500 billion of Shengyang pills to open up the barriers between the infinite worlds and teleport to another world. The moment Lin Fan heard the notifications of the system, his heart burst with joy. Holy FCK. This couldn't have been timelier. Chapter 770. The Great Changes of the Xuanwang World. Chapter 770. The Great Changes of the Xuanwang World. With this strongest attack of the 5 utmost beings, they were bent on crushing Lin Fan entirely. But, they realized that they were punching out into thin air. Their ferocious attacks caused the entire void to be filled with holes. However, that human had long since disappeared into thin air. Where did he go again? The utmost beings were so angry they could explode right now. To think that they were about to get their hands on him and yet he had disappeared once more. How could one not get infuriated over this? The 5 utmost beings turned their heads towards the void in unison, hoping that the heavens will could give them some guidance. The heavens will was silent at this moment. This time around, that human had disappeared entirely, and was not just hiding like before. The ancient saint's sacrificial altar. Could that human have made use of the powers of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar? This was the guess harbored by the heaven's will. However, he denied it almost immediately. The ancient saint's sacrificial altar was able to connect to the infinite worlds, allowing one to travel through them. However, if one wanted to travel to one of those worlds, they would have to obtain a connection with the ancient saint's sacrificial altar before being able to make the teleportation. This human had only just gotten his hands on the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. How could he possibly already make use of its capabilities? But, for the heaven's will, it didn't matter. After all, it wouldn't be long before the infinite worlds opened up. By then, every single world out there would be available for his usage. Even though this human might have obtained the ancient saint's sacrificial altar for now, it would eventually come back to his hands one day. Lin Fan went through an intense spiraling all over the place. Even if his cultivation state was now heaven-defying, he still had a dizzy and nauseous feeling. Burning up 500 billion of Shengyang pills could allow me to travel through the worlds. Could the reason why the system hadn't said anything just now be because it was researching up on this ancient saint's sacrificial altar? When Lin Fan opened up his eyes, he found this world looking ever so familiar. Ah, seems like the spirit chi within the Xuanwang world is so thin. Back when Lin Fan was in the Xuanwang world, Lin Fan did not feel like there was anything different about the spirit chi. However, now that he was back here, he realized that the spirit chi here was not even 1,000th of the ancient saint world. Back when he was traveling through the worlds, the Shengyang pills that had accumulated like a tiny mountain was burnt up entirely into a Shengyang dragon that gushed into the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. And, as though it was a giant tree, branches extended out of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, penetrating into the void before connecting into worlds one after another. Just a single thought was enough for Lin Fan to decide where he wanted to go. It had been around 5 years since Lin Fan reached the ancient saint world. Naturally, he wanted to head back to the Xuanwang world to take a look. And, the most important thing was that he wanted to bring some people up with him. Once the infinite worlds opened up, all of the thousands of worlds out there would be in for some bad luck for sure. Even if one were to create the sealing barrier to prevent ascension or to block out the path to eternity, it wouldn't matter at all. At the end of the day, one could only sit and await death. Lin Fan looked around his surroundings. This was a luscious forest where ancient old trees stood upright, covering the entire sky. The dazzling radiant sun could only seep through the tiny cracks between the dense tree lines, with a little ray here and there. Pishu, pishu. This was the sound of the wind as well as leaves rustling. However, Lin Fan also overheard some hurried footsteps. Lin Fan's expression was weird right now. It couldn't be that he was bumping into some big thing the moment he arrived back, right? Lin Fan raised his head over, and all he could see was some conflict happening in the distance. Even though the aura wasn't all that strong, it was a paracelestial cultivation state at least. But, for Lin Fan right now, be it paracelestial, lesser celestial, or greater celestial beings, they were all ants. If he were to bump into something like this in the past, he would definitely cower in the dark first before trying to sneak an attack in. However, there were no longer such thoughts in the current Lin Fan's head. They were all too weak, so weak that he was practically speechless. Thief. By crippling the young master of our family, you've already committed an audacious sin that is intolerable in this world. If you do not wish for your sect to be destroyed, you had better surrender and head back with me to receive your punishment. An elderly person with a sharp gaze and an astounding aura stood there. Even though his body was slightly older, he still stood ever so tall. His posture was akin to an unsheathed sword that was held upright. Two girls that were wearing golden armors were surrounded by a bunch of soldiers at this moment. The face of the elderly person was grim, and he gave off a chilling aura. He teased and took advantage of my junior sister. He had it coming for him. At this moment, a young girl with a resolute face stood against all of them without any fear at all. However, her eyes were serious at this moment. A young girl with a petite body was being protected by this girl right now. Even though she looked extremely ravishing and breathtaking, every single action she made was meek and gentle. HMPH. The elderly person swept his robes and glared straight at the both of them. You had better surrender now. Otherwise, the entire Flower Stream sect is going to get annihilated because of you guys. The moment he spoke of annihilating the sect, the tone of the elderly person got even heavier, as an ominous aura rumbled. He didn't seem to be joking about this at all. I will take full responsibility for my actions. Come at me if you've got the guts. What are you implicating my sect for? Is this the way the Wang family conducts their affairs? Qin Yue's heart was infuriated. She had not expected that the young man who had dared to bully her own junior sister would be the young master of the Wang family from the Heaven Mountain City. The Flower Stream sect was a small sect that had only started progressing into a middle-sized sect in the recent years. For any sect, most influential families within the secular world would be nothing but small shrimps that they could oppress with ease. But, this Wang family was different. Legend had it that the Wang family had a huge backing. No matter how strong the sect was, they would always give respect to the Wang family. And, even if it were any of the powerful sects, even they might not be a match for the strength of the Wang family either. HMPH. What sort of a revered existence is the young master of my family? And you think you can cripple him just like that? Even the entire of your Flower Stream sect isn't worth a single strand of hair of my young master. Don't think that just because your Flower Stream sect has the backing of Jushao sect, our Wang family wouldn't be able to do anything to you. I'll have you know that the master of your family has an extremely deep relationship with the Saint Devil sect. The moment the elderly person spoke about his family master, his eyes shone with an unparalleled glint. And when he spoke of the Saint Devil sect, his eyes were even burning with a fervent blaze. Pishu. At this moment, the void tore open as a figure appeared out of it. Grand Master. When Qin Yue saw who it was that had arrived, her heart leapt with joy. While she wasn't a match for that elderly person, now that her Grand Master was here, things would be much safer for her. Housekeeper Long. The old lady who was carrying a walking stick in the voids greeted the elderly person respectfully. Old Lady Flower Stream, you shall have a say in this affair. While our Wang family does not bully others readily, it doesn't mean that we would allow others to bully us either. The elderly person spoke up. The moment Qin Yue heard this, her heart was filled with contempt. What was that about the Wang family not bullying anyone readily? Ha, ha, one could simply head over to the Heaven Mountain City and ask around to see just how many people had been bullied by the young master of the Wang family. Old Lady Flower Stream looked at these two disciples of hers. Her eyes shone with a strain of helplessness. Yue, I guess the both of you should head over to the Wang family. Qin Yue had initially thought that the Grand Master was going to help them out. To think that she would request for them to head over to the Wang family. This. Grand Master. The young master of the Wang family was the one who bullied Junior's sister here. That's the only reason why your disciple, I, chose to strike out. Qin Yue'e screamed out. She wanted to know just which part of her action was actually wrong. But to the old lady Flower Stream, this was a matter she had no power over. The Wang family was not one to be offended. Definitely not. As a full female sect, the Flower Stream sect was the target of many different other sects. If not for the protection of the Jushao sect, they would have long been pillaged and destroyed by the other sects. But now, this Wang family was far from ordinary. Even if it were the Jushao sect, they might not step out to protect the Flower Stream sect. Old Lady Flower Stream, you can be at ease over this matter. We'll definitely not implicate your Flower Stream sect. As for these two disciples of yours, I'll bring them back and have them accept the punishment of our family head. The elderly person spoke up. I beseech for Housekeeper Long to spare the lives of my two disciples. There was nothing else old Lady Flower Stream could say. This affair was not something she had any control over. The might of the other party was overwhelming. The Wang family was not to be messed with. November LBJNN. Chapter 771. These are the signs of a villain. Chapter 771. These are the signs of a villain. That's weird. That's weird. Why do I have a feeling of being collateral damage right now? For some unknown reason, Lin Fan felt as though this issue had something to do with him. But that shouldn't be the case. Yours truly was such a low-profile person who was extremely principled when it came to doing things, and would never ever commit crimes. Wang family, Saint Devil sect, Jushao sect. Well, Lin Fan couldn't deny that the last two names did have some relation to him. But what in the world was that first name? What the sh*t was this Wang family? Lin Fan couldn't figure it out at all. But, since this elderly person had already captured those two chicks, Lin Fan might as well just follow him and check out just what the situation was. Heaven Mountain City. This was originally just like any other city, and wasn't all that famous. However, they had progressed rapidly in the past few years, and were now one of the largest cities in the entire Xuanwang world. Guys, look, they've caught those two girls back. Highs, what a tragedy. I wonder how they will have to suffer for offending the Wang family. That's right, those two girls are disciples of the Flower Stream sect. However, compared to the Wang family, the Flower Stream sect is just like a toddler. There's no way to put them together at all. And take a look, isn't that the Grand Master of the Flower Stream sect? By the looks of it, she seems to be here to help them plead for forgiveness. Along the way at the Heaven Mountain City, the crowd began to clamor in discussions. It wasn't long before those two captured girls were brought to the Wang family. As for Lin Fan, he stood outside the Wang family, and was startled when he caught sight of two stone lions. There was some mysterious hidden power stored within the stone lions. Even though the power was practically insignificant for Lin Fan, it was something that no one from the Xuanwang world could stand up against at all. Holy FCK, I've just remembered this. Isn't this the blessings of the heavens will? Wang family, Wang Xiaoliu. At this point, Lin Fan finally had some memories jolting back into him. After spending 5 years in the ancient saint world, he had long forgotten about some stuff. Now that he was at a familiar place once more, it triggered some memories within his heart. Holy FCK, the powerful backing of the Wang family they were talking about, don't tell me that it's me. Suddenly, Lin Fan remembered this incident. Lin Fan could vaguely recall that before he left this place, he had allowed the heavens will to bless down on the Wang's family and suppress any weak beings who would dare to go against them. Back in the sect, Lin Fan had made a promise. Therefore, it was only natural for him to fulfill his promise. But now that he thought clearer about it, those words that he had said were extremely insane. Blessings of the heavens will. In the Xuanwang world, the heavens will was the biggest boss of them all. To be able to obtain the blessings of the heavens will, wouldn't their powers be just godlike? Holy FCK, this Wang Xiaoliu must have done all sorts of bad things, resulting in all the retribution of karma that ends up coming to yours truly. That's why yours truly found it weird. Ever since I headed up to the ancient saint world, I didn't have a good day passing by at all. I was either hunted down by this or chased down by that, as though I was born with one hell of a face worth being taunted at. Within the living room, November LBJNN. The family head of the Wang family sat in the middle. On the right side were delegates of the Wang family, which were all pretty strong. There were even some of them that were of greater celestial cultivation states. Thud, Housekeeper Long tossed Qin Yue'e and the other girl over. Family head, I've brought them back. The elderly person greeted respectfully. Yes. The family head of the Wang family nodded his head. He then looked at the two girls for a moment before putting down his teacup slowly. Do you girls know that that single kick of yours nearly took the life of my son? HMPH. He would have deserved death. Qin Yue tossed her head and scoffed coldly. Brazen. The moment housekeeper Long heard these words, he was angered and wanted to raise his hand, but was stopped by the Wang family head. You don't have to act so hypocritically. If you want to kill me, come at it. I, Qin Yue, am a woman that bears responsibilities for her actions. This has to involve no one else. Yue, what are you saying? Wang family head, on account that she's just an ignorant young teenage girl, please spare her life. Old Lady Flower Stream spoke up. Lin Fan remained hidden in the void and watched everything before him. He could not help but sigh out. This chick's temperament was quite hot, gosh. But now that he hadn't seen this guy for quite some years, Wang Xiaoliu did look like quite the somebody now, donning the robes of the family head. And Wang Xiaoliu was still the old Wang Xiaoliu of the past, without many changes. Seemed like the only one who has changed must be that son of his. Young master, your wounds have yet to recover. Just at this moment, a figure burst into the living room. You smelly B***tch. How dare you injure me? The moment he heard that the woman criminal who had crippled him was captured, Wang Xiaoming hurried over in a huff. Shut up, the Wang family head roared out. However, Wang Xiaoming wasn't afraid of him in the slightest bit. Father, we've already captured them, you've got to seek revenge for me. Our Wang family is not one that can be bullied this easily. Wang Xiaoming yelled out. Lin Fan looked at the Wang Xiaoming before him. For a moment or so, he could not link this person before him with the memories of that little boy in his head. How did he change so much in just 5 years? The Xuanwang world placed the utmost importance on martial arts. Therefore, when most kids were around 12 or 13 years old, the blood within their bodies would start rumbling, resulting in a speedy growth, with which, they would look like an adult by then. Paracelestial lower-level cultivation state. Seems like all of this has gone to the dogs. Looking at the behavior of Wang Xiaoming from within the void, Lin Fan shook his head in disagreement. However, for this lad to be so arrogant and tyrannical and yet remain alive after all these while, seems like I'm the one who played a big part in this. Lin Fan vaguely recalled that 5 years ago when this kid had called him uncle, that was the very moment his virtually non-existent fortune had suddenly skyrocketed up into the heavens. From there on, he was blessed with a good fortune that would render him matchless. If he were to meet with gods, he would kill the gods. If he met with Buddhas, he would kill the Buddhas. Wang Xiaoming, what goes around comes around. That is the way of karma. You will definitely receive yours. Qin Yue cursed him in rage. Karma, I, Wang Xiaoming, have never been afraid of karma. Wang Xiaoming scoffed coldly before turning around. Father, I am going to seal up her cultivation state. Hand her over to me. Young Master Wang, please give this old lady here some face. The moment old Lady Flower Stream saw everything that was happening, she could not help but speak up. This time around, I'm giving face to no one. This B***tch has whacked me so hard that I nearly lost my life. Wang Xiaoming waved his hand dismissively, giving them zero respect at all. Don't come over. When Qin Yue saw how Wang Xiaoming was making his way towards her, she snarled out in rage. HMPH, whack me, I'll let you know later on what are the consequences of whacking me. Wang Xiaoming laughed out coldly. Looking at the behavior of his own son, Wang Xiaoliu could not help but shake his head and sigh. He wanted to speak up. Now that his son was all right, he did not intend to pursue this matter any further. But just at this moment, Wang Xiaoliu was stunned. Qin Yue laughed out frostily as her aura started rising. At the same time, there were some white pills floating around her body. Jushao Godly Thunder Pills. The moment everyone present saw those few white pills, the color from their faces drained out. This Jushao Godly Thunder Pills were weapons of the Jushao sect. If they were to explode, even greater celestial beings would receive some damage. You hedonistic being, you shall go to hell with me. Qin Yue had already made up her mind. If she were to end up in the hands of this hedonistic person, she could not even dare to imagine her state. She might as well self-destruct here. If she could bring him along, that would be for the best. Son, watch out. Wang Xiaoliu bolted upright immediately. His cultivation state wasn't all that high. Despite how extraordinary the status of the Wang family was, the cultivation state of Wang Xiaoliu was nothing more than a paracelestial lower level right now. If these Jushao Godly Thunder Pills were to explode, other than the greater celestial beings present, everyone else might probably die. Indeed, a maddened woman was the scariest thing in the entire world. Master, your disciple here does not wish to suffer in humiliation with junior sister here. This is the only way. Qin Yue looked at the old lady flower stream with tears in her eyes as she prodded the Jushao godly thunder pills furiously. It's too late. All the delegates from the Wang family wanted to repress that power down. But it was all too late now. When Lin Fan caught sight of everything before him, he could not help but shake his head helplessly. Flicking his finger, the entire void froze up. The Jushao godly thunder pills that were about to explode dropped down onto the ground, perfect as they were before. How could this be? At this moment, Qin Yue's face was frightfully pale. She hadn't expected things to end up like this. Housekeeper Long snapped back to his senses and held down Qin Yue immediately. You damned B*TCH, how dare you try to drag your young master here to death with you? Wang Xiaoming was angered right now as he hurled a punch out towards Qin Yue. Qin Yue shut her eyes gently as though she was hoping for a quick release. But just at this moment, the voice of the hedonistic young master rang out. Let go of me, let go of me. There seemed to be an invisible hand that was grabbing Wang Xiaoming to hang up in the void. His feet were lifted off the ground, unable to move at all. Who is it? At this moment, everyone was startled. To think that there could be someone hidden here and yet they didn't sense anything at all. Highs. Chapter 772. Ah, Xiaoming. You're about to go too far. Chapter 772. Ah, Xiaoming. You're about to go too far. This single sigh boomed out like thunder that rang out within the hearts of everyone present. Qin Yue looked around the void rapidly, trying to seek out this mysterious person. Amongst the present crowd, there was no lack of greater celestial full cultivation state powerful beings. In fact, there were even a couple of them who had cultivated over 10 energy grid line chains. But despite that, there was no one who could detect the location of the other party. Since when has there been such a powerful being that existed within the Xuanwang world? Sir, may I know who you are? Could you please present yourself? Wang Xiaoliu looked over to the void and cupped his fists. Towards the safety of his own child, Wang Xiaoliu still had quite a bit of confidence. While it was evident that he was in the grasp of the other party right now, Wang Xiaoliu knew that the heavens will of the Xuanwang Rodel was watching over the Wang family. If there were any danger to their lives, the heavens will would eventually appear to protect their descendants. All of the delegates that were present exchanged glances with one another. They could only hear that single sigh, yet they could not find any trace of the other party at all. This was way too incredulous in their minds. Old Lu, even you can't sense that? One of the delegates asked an elderly person at the side respectfully. This elderly person had the highest cultivation state out of everyone present, with a full 12 energy grid line chains to his name. Compared to those senior elders of the great sects, he wouldn't be much weaker. But right now, even old Lu was frowning. Inevitably, this caused everyone to feel pretty startled. Looking at everything before him, Lin Fan could not help but feel exasperated in his heart. This Wang Xiaoming must have been drunk on power. Of all the good things that he could learn, he ended up learning to lead a hedonistic lifestyle. If not for the fact that yours truly had been watching over his back, he would have long been slaughtered outside. Xiaoliu. Suddenly, the voice boomed out from the void once more. However, this time around, everyone was truly flabbergasted. Xiaoliu, that was the name of the Wang family head. But ever since the Wang family turned so influential, there had been no one who would dare to call him with that name. That was because the name itself sounded so gaudy. Wang Xiaoliu's face changed. It seemed as though there was something bugging him at the back of his head, and he was trying to recall it. Xing. The void trembled. Lin Fan was ready to head out and take responsibility for this scene now. And when the true body of Lin Fan finally made its way out of the void, all the delegates present at the Wang family leapt forth and surrounded him. Qin Yue looked at this noble figure before her. Even though the other party did not speak at all, those long hair of his that fluttered with the breeze had deeply captivated her heart. He's the one who had saved me. But, who in the world is he? Qin Yue's heart was confused as she could not help but start imagining things. Right now, Lin Fan's cultivation state was that of a divine celestial level 9, 8 desolates united state. The aura he gave off was far from any normal beings. Everywhere he stood would naturally turn into the center of attraction for the world. Who are you? Why are you here at the Wang family to act so insolently? The faces of the delegates right now were cautious. They knew that this young man before them was far from simple. All of you, make way. At this moment, Wang Xiaoliu peeled the crowd away from him as he looked at this man emotionally. This familiar face was one that Wang Xiaoliu would not forget for the rest of his life. But now that he was appearing before them once more, everything had Wang Xiaoliu feeling so surreal. Ever since the Wang family had been established, Wang Xiaoliu had tried scouting out for news. Eventually, he got to know everything he needed to know. As such, he thought that there wasn't going to be any chance for him to meet with this man ever again for the rest of his life. But, to think that he would appear before his eyes so realistically once more. Wang family head, be careful. Old Lu warned him warily. Old Lu was filled with gratitude towards this Wang family head. Back when he was being hunted down, he had escaped here and managed to seek asylum with the Wang family. From then on, he became one of their delegates. At the same time, the Wang family had even produced a large amount of resources for him to cultivate. This was something that old Lu could never repay. Wang Xiaoliu waved his hands off. It's all right. If he truly wanted to kill me, there would be no one in this world who could stop him. The moment these words of Wang Xiaoliu were spoken out, the masses were startled once more. After that, they looked at this young man with an immensely curious gaze. Who in the world is this young man such that the Wang family head would speak of such words? There shouldn't be someone with those capabilities in the Xuanwang world, right? Big brother. Wang Xiaoliu's eyes were reddened as he spoke with a croaky hoarse voice. What? At this moment, everyone seemed as though they had misheard him. What did the Wang family head just call this young man? Big brother. At this moment, everyone's attentions were flushed onto Lin Fan. This was something that was inconceivable. At this moment, Qin Yue's heart suddenly sank. To think that this young man would be acquaintances with the Wang family. This. You Uncle Lin. Wang Xiaoming, who was being hung up in the air, suddenly returned to his senses. He then looked at this young man in bewilderment. A flood of emotions burst forth from within his heart while a series of images gushed right through into his mind. At this moment, Wang Xiaoming finally recalled, Uncle Lin. I am Xiaoming. I'm bullied by this stinky B***tch. You have to stand up for me. Even though Wang Xiaoming had only met Uncle Lin once in his life, he would always remember one thing. Back when he was young, Uncle Lin had once fondled his head. And it's precisely because you're Xiaoming that you're even having the chance to speak right now. Otherwise, you would already be a dead corpse. Lin Fan scolded harshly. He had not expected that just a few years of absence had caused that once pure and innocent Wang Xiaoming to turn into a hedonistic man. This was way too speechless for Lin Fan. Uncle Lin, please don't scare me. Xiaoming knows of his mistakes now. The moment he heard these words, he started bawling out in tears. This was especially so after he caught sight of that stern expression of Lin Fan. It got him so scared his little heart was thumping furiously. When Lin Fan caught sight of the situation before him, he chuckled out. Whether or not this was a hedonistic boy, it didn't matter to him. After all, he wasn't all that good of a man either. So what if this boy had turned out to be hedonistic? Lin Fan chuckled and walked forth before patting on Wang Xiaoming's head just like when he was a young child. This was a feeling that was ever so familiar for Wang Xiaoming. Ding! Discovered eternally hated body of the destined child. Lin Fan had wanted to say something, but he shut up all of a sudden. That calm heart of his had suddenly started thumping furiously once more. What in the world was this system saying? Eternally hated body of the destined child. Within the universe, there are many living beings that carry forth with them the power of the universe. One that gathers a huge amount of fortune would be considered as a destined child. There is a myriad of different types of destined child bodies. But amongst all of these destined children, they have a destined foe. This destined foe would be born with a face of mockery that could allow all the destined children to work their hardest to raise their own cultivation states. And this is the eternally hated body of the destined child. Holy F***ck. Lin Fan was stunned. This was the first time he had come across such a body type. However, that was not right either. How could Wang Xiaoming possess such a body type? Lin Fan checked out Wang Xiaoming carefully. And at this moment, Wang Xiaoming felt the back of his hair standing up, feeling a bad feeling from this. That's right, it must be because I must have given Wang Xiaoming too much fortune back then. As the saying goes, too much of a good thing is bad as well. Initially, with the backing of yours truly, Wang Xiaoming was destined to lead the life of a main character. However, because I gave him way too much, it ended up having the opposite effect, and he is now the destined foe out of all the destined children out there. For all the destined children out there, Wang Xiaoming was just like a whip. From time to time, he would lash at them, allowing them to unleash their potentials and work hard at cultivating. In order to prove this theory in his mind, Lin Fan cast his sights at Qin Yue. November LBJNN. And this single look was more than enough to prove Lin Fan's guess. Qin Yue's potential was immensely high, and there was a strain of consciousness deep within her that was in slumber. At the same time, that unyielding character of hers was entirely befitting of being a destined child. At this moment, Lin Fan was speechless. To think that things would turn out as such. However, it didn't take long before Lin Fan's mind started whirling as he had just thought out of a grand and ambitious plan. Chapter 773, One Hell of a Ruckus. Chapter 773, One Hell of a Ruckus. Uncle Lin, please let me go. When Wang Xiaoming, who was strung up in the air, caught sight of that grin that appeared on the face of his Uncle Lin, he felt his heart freeze up. For some unknown reason, he had a really bad feeling about this. November LBJNN. Shut up, unfilial son. Wang Xiaoliu roared out. He then came before Lin Fan with a face full of reproach. Big brother, everything that this small brother has right now was all given to me by you, big brother. Yet, I ended up bringing up such an unfilial son. It's all my fault, big brother. The delegates of the Wang family had been listening intently. When they heard these words coming out of the Wang family head, everyone felt their hearts rattling. Everything that the Wang family has was given to them by this man. Could this man be? All of a sudden, everyone present felt as though their minds could not come to terms with everything that was happening right now. The rise of the Wang family was really mysterious. However, the backing behind them was even more mysterious. It was even rumored that they had the blessings of the heavens will itself. However, these delegates of the Wang family knew that the rumors were all true. The Wang family did have the blessings of the heavens will. Not only that, they had even heard the Wang family head mention that it was his big brother that had allowed the heavens will to bless the Wang family. A man who could command the heavens will, what sort of an existence was that? At this moment, no one present dared to imagine any further. They felt as though everything that they were witnessing this day was way too explosive. Xiaoliu, what nonsense are you spouting? You are my small brother. Everything that you do shall be covered by me. Even if you were to cause the entire world to topple over, could I, Lin Fan, have my small brother bear the burden himself? Lin Fan waved his hands, unbothered about everything that had happened. Furthermore, when he discovered that Xiaoming was the eternally hated body of the destined child, he couldn't feel any bit of anger anymore. An even larger plan was looming over the mind of Lin Fan. He had to plan this out properly. Looking at everything before her, Qin Yue's face changed. She had not expected this fella to be in cahoots with the Wang family. Against the face of this absolute power, she did not have any bit of resistance left in her anymore. Big brother, Wang Xiaoliu looked at Lin Fan. For a moment, he did not know what to say anymore. Let this matter be, release them, Lin Fan waved his hand and said. While housekeeper Long did not know who this man was, he knew that this must be some ridiculously hell of a person if even the family head had to call him big brother respectfully. Without thinking twice, he let go of the captives. Old Lady Flower Stream could not help but heave out a sigh of relief at this. Thankfully, nothing went down. However, she did not know who this man before her was, neither did she know where he hailed from. But, looking at how respectful the Wang family head was towards him, he should naturally be far from normal. Uncle Lin, how can we let them off so easily? What if they were to find trouble with me again next time? Wang Xiaoming had not expected things to come to this, and felt a little scared after everything now. Even though there were many delegates in the Wang family and they could protect him, who knew when this smelly B***TCH might come and capture him one fine day if he were careless? Then that is your own business. Since you created this mess, you have to settle it yourself. Lin Fan said. Wang Xiaoming had wanted to say something more. But when he caught sight of the expression on his father's face, he was startled and shut his mouth obediently. HMPH. Qin Yue shot Wang Xiaoming a fierce glance. Her meaning was clear, this was not over just yet. And Lin Fan was just watching everything with delight. Right now, he had to craft out his plan step by step. The crowd then dispersed. As for Lin Fan, he made his way to Wang Xiaoliu's study room and began discussing. What? To think that so many things would have happened in the few years I was not here. Lin Fan's brows furrowed, he had not expected all of this to happen. That's right, big brother. There have been plenty of things going on in these 5 years that you weren't around. Wang Xiaoliu lamented. Lin Fan put out his palm and the heavens will appeared in a flash. The heavens will of the Xuanwang world had long been trained up by Lin Fan. As such, it was appearing before him obediently right now. As for Wang Xiaoliu, he also felt respectful when he saw the heavens will appear. After all, the Wang family had been watched over by the Heaven's Will's blessings all these years. Lin Fan looked at the Heaven's Will and permeated him with his consciousness, looking at everything that had happened in the past few years. This one look was quite something, to be honest. Lin Fan had not expected these many changes to occur after he had left. However, he could not help himself from chuckling out involuntarily. The Heaven's Will watched over the entire Xuanwang world, and everything that happened was within the Heaven's Will's vision. When Lin Fan was done watching everything, he shook his head helplessly. Those two brats, Zhichao and Juling, they were way too immature. As for Zhang Ergo, Mie Chongqi, Chiki, Feng Buju and Tian Yu, how could they not know better and add on to the ruckus of the girls? Heaven's Will, did you not interfere with these affairs? Lin Fan asked. The Heaven's Will looked over at Lin Fan before shaking his head and said with an exasperated face, I couldn't do anything about it. The moment Lin Fan heard this, he did not know what to say for a moment or so. This Heaven's Will really knew when the right time to shrug off responsibilities was. However, he was right as well. These people had a really intimate relationship with Lin Fan. Even if he wanted to meddle in their affairs, he couldn't. These two brats have really caused way too much trouble. When I find them, I'm going to have to discipline them properly. Goodness, they've really caused one hell of a huge mess out of this fine Xuanwang world. When Lin Fan caught sight of everything, he was caught in a huff for a moment or so, unable to recover from it. Do you know how Yongxian is like now? Utilizing the Eye of the Heaven's Will, Lin Fan checked out on Yongxian's location and how she was doing recently. Xuanjian sect. Zan Yongxian had long taken on the role of the Grand Master of the Xuanjian sect. During the day, she would be busy with the affairs of the sect. When night came, she would raise her head and look up into the stars, as though she was waiting for something. In a single thought, 5 years had passed just like that. And Yongxian had been like that for the whole 5 years as well. This was something that Lin Fan felt really guilty about. There were way too many people that Lin Fan was worried about. All of his students back at the school that he had once taught at, the 14 Sand Bandits, etc. These were all inseparable parts of Lin Fan's past. Xiaoming, come on in. Lin Fan had sensed Xiaoming's presence at the doorsteps and invited him in. Uncle Lin, Xiaoming entered and stood before Lin Fan respectfully. He did not dare to act defiantly right now. Big brother, I've only got this one son of mine. And now, he doesn't even act like an adult. It really pains my heart. Please help me with this, big brother. Wang Xiaoliu spoke up. Yes, don't worry, leave it to me. Lin Fan nodded his head and said. Father, uncle, I am already an adult, no? Wang Xiaoming asked. Lin Fan chuckled out, from tomorrow on, you shall head out and undergo training. In Lin Fan's opinion, he knew that it would be impossible if he wanted to change the attitude of Xiaoming right now. However, as someone who possessed the eternally hated body of the destined child, how could he absorb more hatred from others if he did not head out? Uncle Lin, I quite like it here. I don't want to go out. The moment Wang Xiaoming heard this, he was taken aback. What was he to do if he had to head out? He was practically the crown prince of the Heaven Mountain City. Whatever he wanted, he would get it. If he were to go out, wouldn't he be killed by others? Unfilial son, shut up. If your Uncle Lin wants you to head out, you head out. Otherwise, I'm going to break your legs. When it came to the ways of educating his kid, Wang Xiaoliu was obeying Lin Fan's words for sure. Lin Fan's words were the law as far as he was concerned. In Wang Xiaoliu's opinion, his big brother must definitely have confidence over this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suggested it. Xiaoming, don't worry, do you think your Uncle Lin will harm you? I've already left a single strain of my consciousness on your body. Once you get out, just do as you want and however you want to. I assure you that nothing will happen to you. Lin Fan chuckled out. Are you for real, Uncle Lin? The moment Wang Xiaoming heard this, he was overwhelmed with joy. The reason why he didn't want to head out was that he knew that he wasn't all that strong. If he were to brag and flaunt outside brazenly, wouldn't he be walloped into an idiot? Naturally, Lin Fan grinned back. Big brother, this. Wang Xiaoliu could not understand the intentions behind his big brother's actions. Lin Fan waved it off with his hands and replied with confidence, don't worry. I've got this. Even though Wang Xiaoliu could not get it, he could only let it be at this point. As for Wang Xiaoming, this was a bloody joyous event worth celebrating. With Uncle Lin backing him, what else could he be afraid of? The heavens and earth might be great, but none of them were greater than the one and only Uncle Lin. Chapter 774, The Tao Kings with an immensely positive feedback. Chapter 774, The Dao Kings with an immensely positive feedback. Lin Fan did not stay too long at the Heaven Mountain City. Just that single night of chatting with Wang Xiaoliu. The next day, Lin Fan raised Xiaoming up into the void, and then tossed him out into somewhere far from the Heaven Mountain City. Uncle Lin, you must remember to watch over me. Wang Xiaoming yelled out before disappearing. Don't worry. Before Lin Fan left, he sniggered out. Now that the troublemaker was set loose in the world, who knew how many destined childs would enter SEED mode under that arrogant and haughty behavior of Wang Xiaoming? This was something that Lin Fan was looking forward to. However, in order to prevent Wang Xiaoming from going way overboard, Lin Fan had specially instructed the Heavens will to watch over him. If he were to do something like forcing himself on chicks or something, he would definitely be struck by lightning. The gods were always watching after people. And in this case, Lin Fan was the god above Wang Xiaoming's head. And since Wang Xiaoming would call Lin Fan as his uncle, Lin Fan naturally couldn't let him continue to veer off into the wrong path. It was alright for one to be haughtier when they were young. After all, he himself was pretty decent right now. Not long after, or perhaps for someone like Lin Fan, it would be more accurate to say that it was in the blink of an eye. A towering city entered Lin Fan's eyes. To think that there would be such a humongous city built within the Xuanwang world. Seems like after the issue of the beasts were settled, cities were no longer under the threat of the beast stampedes. As such, they could progress steadily. Landing from the void, Lin Fan entered the city. Countless hawkers were selling their stuff on the sides of the streets, and countless of martial artists walking all around. Sweeping the entire place with his single thought, Lin Fan could sense that there were different types of martial artists here. Furthermore, their cultivation states were pretty decent as well. Evidently, now that they weren't bothered by any external influences, the progress here had been steady over the past few years. In a restaurant, at this moment, Lin Fan melded in like any other commoner and ordered some food and drinks while listening into the stories of everyone else. It had been a long time since he had had such a relaxed moment. 5 years ago, things weren't all that peaceful within the Xuanwang world, with beasts running rampant. A city might be all safe and secure one day, but it was hard to say that they wouldn't be toppled down by beasts in the next moment. And today, the story I'm going to tell is one of the 14 Sand Dao Kings. At this moment, an elderly man was walking in briskly under the support of a young maiden. He then came to a seat reserved for him beforehand as he laid down the tools in his hands. Shrugging off the tightness in his body, he declared in a high voice. All right, a story about the 14 Sand Dao Kings is great. Old man Shu, hurry up and tell us. If it's good, we'll reward you with money. The 14 Sand Dao Kings. The moment Lin Fan heard this, he nearly barfed out. Why in the hell did this name sound so familiar? Thinking back at his 14 sand bandits, Lin Fan was feeling a little nostalgic. Those once evil-doing 14 sand bandits had only pursued the Tao of robbery wholeheartedly after being subdued by him. Now that 5 years had passed, Lin Fan did not know how they were doing. But now that even their titles had changed, it was evident that they must have improved somehow. There are a total of 14 people amongst the 14 Sand Dao Kings. Each one of them possesses a godly cultivation state, and could be considered as the first Dao Kings of the Xuanwang world. Do note that this Dao we're referring to is not the same as bandit. Even though they are robbers by profession, they have principles and could be considered as heroes. Old Man Shu's speech was like a flowing river that did not stop and brought with it countless precious treasures within. Say, old man, how can that be right? If they're bandits, how can they be considered as heroes? A young man from the opposite table asked curiously. By the looks of it, that young man seemed like he had only just stepped foot into the pugilistic world. No rushes there, young man. Let me elaborate further. Old Man Shu raised that wrinkled hand of his and continued his story. If they were merely just bandits, then, of course, we couldn't refer to them as heroes. I, Old Man Shu, had once had the honor of making an acquaintance with the leader Shah of the 14 Sand Dao Kings. We interacted for an entire night. After drinking some wine, leader Shah spoke of the truth. While mere bandits possessed the craft of robbery, they were different. They pursued the Tao of robbery. Old Man Shu, continue bragging. Go on, someone like you could interact with the leader Shah for an entire night. Ha, ha. Someone scoffed out in disbelief. Old Man Shu gave 2 dry coughs, evidently unbothered, and continued, the 14 Sand Dao Kings conduct their business in a weird way. When a robbery is mentioned, one would definitely talk about the killings. But no, they do not ever kill when they conduct a robbery. They would only collect a fixed amount. And not only that, they would escort their targets to their desired locations as well. Don't you guys agree that that is weird? That's right, that is weird indeed. As far as all these people at the restaurants were concerned, the one thing they loved to do while relaxing every day was to sit here and listen to stories. Looking at how the atmosphere was just right, Old Man Shu continued, while what I'm going to say might seem hard to believe, but if you were to think properly about it, don't you guys think that these 14 Sandao Kings are doing a good deed? Right now, the world is peaceful, without any disturbances of beasts. However, bandits roam the entire lands. The path of delivering goods is often long and tedious for merchants, and they would most likely be halted by bandits midway. Losing a bit of money is a small issue. But losing their lives, that is something that can't be regained. As for these 14 Sandao Kings, while they rob, the amount is fixed. While they're bandits, they do not kill. And, they even escort these merchants to their destination. Based on the observation of this old man, there are even countless merchants in this city who do not engage any guards. Instead, they choose to tread through the territory of the 14 Sandao Kings on purpose. And when the 14 Sandao Kings weren't around, the merchants would set up base at their territory and await their return. Now, you guys can speak for yourselves. If bandits could have a name for themselves to such an extent, could they not be considered as heroes? Old Man Shu continued. The moment Lin Fan heard till this point, he nearly spat out his wine. Sha Yulong and the others were way too good at doing this, weren't they? To think that they could even come up with a style of robbery as such. It was a style such that others would be wholeheartedly willing to sit right there and wait for them to come and rob. These were indeed some capabilities they had gotten there. Back in the past, Lin Fan was only talking cock to them about the Tao of robbery, and it was all just a complete scam. But looking at the situation now, Sha Yulong and the others did seem like they were finding the Tao of robbery. November LBJNN. Talents. They were talents indeed. After drinking his wine, Lin Fan could not help but acknowledge. Seemed like anyone trained up by him was destined to become a talent indeed. HMPH. Aren't they just a bunch of bandits still? And yet you could make them out to be heroes. After today, those 14 sand bandits shall cease to exist. At this moment, a bunch of disciples wearing the robes of a sect walked in one after another. Attendant, serve wine. ... Why would you guys say that? Old Man Shu asked in bewilderment. The disciple in charge of them held a haughty expression. Today, your daddy is in a good mood. So, I'll let you know. We are disciples of the Juling sect. Today, this barren city shall become one of the colonies under the Juling sect. Therefore, these bandits in the surrounding area shall be weeded out as well. These 14 Sandao Kings and whatnot shall be erased from history as well. When this arrogant-looking disciple mentioned that he was from the Juling sect, his expression got even haughtier. He raised his wine cup and downed it in a single shot. These guys are disciples of the Juling sect. Juling sect is a sect that was only built up a couple of years ago. I heard that when their sect opened up, there were many major sects that headed over to pay their respects. It was a grand occasion. The rumors have it that the Grand Master of the Juling sect is a young lady that's termed as the Juling female empress. Not only are her powers torrential, her way of the martial arts is tyrannical as well. There have been countless people who have died under her hands. The barren city turning into a colonial city of the Juling sect. This is something big. If the Juling sect were to strike out, things would truly be bad for this 14 Sandao Kings. That's right, that's right. Lin Fan frowned. He did not linger on for long as he turned around and left the place. Chapter 775. This is an insult to us. Chapter 775. This is an insult to us. The area 100 miles in radius around of the barren city was a desolate desert. This was the territory of the 14 Sandao Kings. Back when Sha Yulong was looking for a place to set up their base, this was the first place he caught sight of. Hence, that single decision had them here for the years later on. And in these few years, Sha Yulong had crafted out quite a name for himself. Everyone from the barren city knew that the 14 sand bandits resided here in these 100 miles of desolate desert. However, these residents of the barren city knew that these sand bandits were nothing to be fearful of, and they would never rob poor people such as themselves. As for the merchants, they were really fearful at the very beginning. But after the first brave merchant made his trip through this place, things changed entirely from there on. The 14 sand bandits then became overwhelmingly welcomed. From time to time, there would even be merchants who would intentionally stay here, hoping to be robbed by the 14 sand bandits. From then on, the 14 sand bandits were then referred to by the merchants as the 14 Sandao Kings. These were reasonable bandits. In the eyes of those merchants, these 14 Sandao Kings were bandits with ethics and morals. Today looks like yet another wonderful day for robbing. Sitting on a small slope, Sha Yulong looked at the scorching, radiant sun and exclaimed. Big brother, you're right. The weather is pretty good today. The masses accompanying him replied. I believe that we're finally started to peek at the entrance of the Tao of robbery by now. Our big brother hadn't lied to us back then. The Tao of robbery does exist. Sha Yulong's face was full of nostalgia. At this moment, everyone quietened down. In the past few years, their entourage had strengthened, and they had taken in a number of people. However, at this moment, everyone knew that their leader was thinking about someone right now. During these moments, they had to maintain their absolute silence. Otherwise, the leader would get mad. And if the leader got mad, that would be a bad thing. The least of the punishments would be a couple of days without food. Let's go. Let us continue to rob. After God knows how long, Sha Yulong finally came back to his senses and waved out with his hand. The word, rob, was said with such grandeur as though there was nothing wrong with it at all. For these 14 sand bandits, the only times when they would feel alive and find meaning in their lives was when they were conducting a robbery. Why are the 14 sand Dao kings not here yet? At this moment, a convoy stopped in the middle of the desert. The leading carriage of these convoys had a bright flag perched on its top. If any resident of the barren city were to catch sight of it, they would recognize it immediately. This was the flags of one of the trading companies within the barren city. A middle-aged man walked out of the lead carriage and asked, "They're not here yet?" "Nopes." A servant who had been gazing across the distance shook his head. The middle-aged man looked at the desolate desert. He then caught sight of a couple more convoys that were arriving from the distance. Damn it, to think that we would be so unlucky this time around. Seems like there are quite a number of merchant convoys here, the middle-aged man said with displeasure. It was as though he was heartbroken that there were others coming to snatch his position of being robbed. If anyone who did not know of the situation passed by here, they would definitely be astounded. To think that there would even be queues for robberies right now. Had the world changed or what? When one of the convoys made its way over, the middle-aged man frowned. He had caught sight of his competitor in the same trade. Not only did they have to compete in terms of business, they even had to compete here. Damn it. Oh, seems like you're here too, shopkeeper Wong. From the convoy that arrived in the distance, a fat middle-aged man chuckled out. Shopkeeper Lee, you were the ones who were robbed previously. Don't tell me that you intend to steal that away from me this time around as well. Shopkeeper Wong asked with displeasure. Shopkeeper Wong, you're speaking of it the wrong way now. The able ones get robbed. Furthermore, you're not the only one waiting to be robbed here, Shopkeeper Wong. Shopkeeper Lee replied. HMPH. They were both merchants of the barren city. When they headed out to the other cities with merchant convoys, they would have to go through treacherous paths where dangers lurked at every corner. Even though they had employed numerous powerful beings under their watch, they would still lose about 4 out of 10 of their trips. This was quite the troubling issue for them. But now, things were different. Any convoy that was lucky enough to be selected by the 14 sand bandits would enjoy a carefree trip, free of disasters. They would definitely arrive at their destinations safely. Therefore, for any merchant of the barren city, it was one hell of a good luck if they were to be selected as robbery victims for the 14 sand bandits. Right at this moment, yellow sand flew all over the sky as the area was filled with dust clouds. They're here, they're here. All of the merchant convoys cast their sights into the distance with a look of anticipation. If they weren't selected this time around, they could only wait for the next time. To them, the 14 sand bandits were an extremely credible assurance. Back in the past, they had all attempted to spend a large amount of money to employ their services. However, for Sha Yulong and the others, this was nothing but an insult to their trade as bandits. Hence, he rejected them flatly. Leader, there are so many merchant convoys yet again this time around. Which one of them should we rob? For some of the older members of the team, this was a troubling issue. For some of the newbies, a sight like this had them stumped. They had not expected being bandits to be this easy. There were merchants fighting at their doorsteps, fearing that they wouldn't get robbed. For Sha Yulong, this was a sight he was long used to. We'll let fate decide then. At that moment, a long howl rang out as Sha Yulong leapt up into the sky with a majestic disposition. Robbery. This cry of robbery was enough to shock the world and have gods and ghosts cry over it. This was impressive to say the least. The bandits are here! The bandits are here! At this moment, everyone from the merchant convoys yelled out frantically. An aura of fear spread through the entire world. Some of these merchants had arrived at the barren city to collect some goods. And now that they had gotten their goods and were preparing to return, they came to test their luck upon hearing of the rumors of the 14 sand bandits. But looking at the frightful looks that everyone was giving off right now, they were bewildered. Oh, the great 14 sand Dao kings. Please come and rob me. I'll be willing to offer a fixed amount. One of the new merchant convoys shouted out. As for those surrounding merchant convoys who were entirely engrossed in their acting right now, they looked at this new merchant convoy with the same eyes one would use to look at an idiot when they heard the cries. That merchant convoy must be new, right? How dare they speak of such humiliating words? That's right. Honestly, one can't blame the ignorant ones though. But these words are nothing but a direct insult to the 14 sand bandits. HMPH. The 14 sand bandits will never ever rob a merchant convoy that is not afraid of us. Men, take them away. The moment Sha Yulong heard those words, his face changed as he was a little peeved. The might of their 14 sand bandits was unparalleled. To think that after traveling for endless of miles out in the world, there would be a merchant convoy that didn't fear them. What sort of a humiliation was this? Yes, what's going on? The new merchant convoy was beyond confused, not knowing what this all meant. It's a robbery. Men on the left, women on the right. Trannies in the middle. Our 14 sand bandits will only rob your wealth and not your bodies or lives. But if you're not obedient, then you can't blame us for being merciless. Sha Yulong burst out as a tremendous aura caged everyone within. Spare us. Please spare us. Please don't rob us. Even though these experienced merchant convoys were begging for mercy in their mouths, their actions were swift as they started queuing up. Men on the left, women on the right. Trannies in the middle. But, up till this day, they had yet to see a tranny standing in the middle just yet. Leader, someone's standing in the middle. A voice yelled out. Sha Yulong's face changed as he headed forth immediately. November LBJNN. Shopkeeper Li was giving off a terrified look right now. However, he still straightened his body as he stood there. Don't kill me. Please don't kill me. HMPH. Don't worry. We of the 14 sand bandits are professional and ethical men. We will definitely not take your life or FCKU. Hand over everything that's valuable in your possession and place them all within this small bag. Sha Yulong ordered fiercely. Why yes. Shopkeeper Li was overwhelmed with joy in his heart as his hand motions did not stop at all. He commanded everyone under him to hand over everything that was valuable to them and toss them all into that bag. When the surrounding merchant convoys saw the 14 sand bandits robbing Shopkeeper Li, they were helpless in their hearts. They hadn't expected that they wouldn't be chosen. Shopkeeper Wang was bearing the biggest grudges right now. How had things turned out as such? When he caught sight of the smug expression on the face of Shopkeeper Li, he was even more furious, without any way to vent it out at all. Boom! All of a sudden, the ground started quaking up violently. Yellow sands rumbled all over the skies in the distance. Leader, the army of the Barren City is here. The army of the Barren City. Prepare for battle, Sha Yulong yelled out. Yes. Chapter 776, Step to Death. Chapter 776, Step to Death. What's the army here for? The many merchant convoys here were confused. The 14 sand bandits had been really law-abiding citizens in their many years in Barren City's vicinity. Even though they robbed, they gave back in their own way. In the words of some people, the 14 sand bandits were truly professional and ethical bandits. Their robbing of valuables was only an equivalent of them collecting protection fee. In fact, after the 14 sand bandits made this place their base, some of the other nefarious bandits who had wanted to do harm to the Barren City were blocked out by them. And, the most important thing was that the city master of the Barren City itself had once commended the 14 sand bandits personally. But now that the army was coming down personally, everyone was completely befuddled. Elder, the base of the 14 sand bandits is straight up ahead. One of the disciples of Juling sect leaned close to a suave and elegant man while he remarked. Yes, this city master of the Barren City is absolutely ridiculous. To think that he would dare to say that these bandits here are bandits with morals, and would even dare to term them as the 14 sand Dao kings. If word of this were to get out, wouldn't this be one hell of a laughingstock? Furthermore, now that the Barren City has already become a colonial city under our Juling sect, if we were to allow the bandits to continue roaming around our colony, wouldn't that be an insult to our Juling sect? This suave and elegant man did not look any older than in his 20s. However, his position was extraordinary, and was an elder of the Juling sect. His cultivation was astounding. Right now, he was already a greater celestial middle-level cultivation state being. One fine day 3 years ago, he was just a man who was accomplished in his cultivation and roaming around the pugilistic world. Back then, he wasn't a disciple of the dueling sect yet. That day, he met with the dueling female empress of the dueling sect and immediately recognized her as a divinely being of remarkable beauty. From then on, he submitted to her and wanted to lean closer to her. Because of that, he recommended himself to be an elder of the dueling sect. However, there was one thing that Feng Wuxiang was helpless about. He was handsome and elegant, and there were countless girls who were intoxicated over his suaveness. Yet, this dueling female empress couldn't be any colder towards him. This was something that Feng Wuxiang could not take lying down. He refused to believe that there was a woman within this world he could not charm. Back when he had first met the dueling female empress, she was still young and looked like a Lolita. However, over the past few years, she had matured and grown with an elegant grace and a peerless demeanor. That cold disposition of hers had Feng Wuxiang's heart fluttering even more towards her. Elder Feng, you were right. I think that the city master of the barren city must be colluding with these bandits. Otherwise, why would he speak up for these bandits? All the disciples surrounded him and fawned while complimenting his words. The dueling sect was their asylum. Even though the might of dueling sect could not be comparable to those truly major sects, those major sects somehow would give their dueling female empress quite a bit of respect. This was something that gave these guys a lot of face. When they were outside, as long as they declared their sect, none of the other sects would dare to mess with them. Yes, the barren city is now a colonial city of our dueling sect. Once we clear out these bandits in the area of 100 miles around the barren city, we will head down to the next city. That Saint Devil sect has already taken down 10 cities by now. If we were to fall behind, we are going to be punished. Feng Wuxiang commented. As a greater celestial middle-level cultivation state being, Feng Wuxiang could be considered as quite powerful in the Xuanwang world. He wasn't all that weak within the dueling sect as well. However, Feng Wuxiang had no idea just what type of background this dueling sect had. Even though he was an elder, he was the weakest out of all the elders. All of those people who were around the dueling female empress were one sicker than the other. Each time he faced them, he would feel as though he was facing some huge mountains. That was some crazy pressure. Elder, check it out. Those bandits are robbing again. A disciple before him exclaimed out. HMPH, get the whole army out. Feng Wuxiang waved out with his hand. Today, we shall kill all of these bandits. All the soldiers of the barren city did not know what to say any longer. How could they not know of the 14 sand bandits? Their own city master had always enjoyed chats over wine with the leader of the 14 sand bandits personally. There was even one time when the city master wanted to betroth his own daughter in marriage over to the leader. But, after thinking more about it, he knocked off the idea. After all, Sha Yulong was getting a little old now. And, the main point was that he was too ugly. Now that this dueling sect and whatnot had taken control over the barren city, they wanted to engage the entire army and take down the 14 sand bandits. Were they retarded or what? 14 sand bandits, you guys have committed many grave crimes and have robbed merchant convoys. Today, I, Feng Wuxiang of the dueling sect, shall have all of you killed right here. Feng Wuxiang's aura burst forth along with his sharp gaze. The moment he spoke out, it was as though he was standing on the side of the righteousness while he looked down at the 14 sand bandits. November LBJNN. What's this all about? That's right, what has this got to do with the dueling sect? Everyone, we haven't been robbed at all. And, they're not some crime-committing bandits or whatnot either. The merchant convoys yelled out one after another. Little doll there, you're quite interesting, aren't you? Our 14 sand bandits have trodden all over the deserts, and yet, there has never been anyone who had dared to come at us so brazenly. Sha Yulong shouted back. HMPH. Feng Wuxiang snorted coldly. He then looked over at the merchant convoys. All of you merchant convoys had better leave this place quickly. I'll have you guys know that the blades have no eyes. If you guys were to suffer any losses or anything, you would have asked for it. This. All of a sudden, all the merchant convoys did not know what to do any longer. Wasn't this one hell of a scam? Shopkeeper Li was especially close to puking out blood. The robbery shall end today. All of you, hurry and leave. Sha Yulong frowned. From his point of view, something must have happened to the barren city. He knew of this dueling sect. But, he hadn't expected them to come knocking for him. Leader, aye. Shopkeeper Li was indignant. He was so close to succeeding. How could this happen? Don't worry. The 14 sand bandits are a bunch of professional and ethical bandits. Since we've robbed you, we will definitely account for it. Just come back to us next time. Sha Yulong remarked. Leader, I'll hold you accountable to your words. Shopkeeper Li was elated. Sure, Sha Yulong nodded his head. With the confirmation of Sha Yulong, this bunch of merchant convoys scooted off really far away. Big brother, these guys aren't weak. The masses of the 14 sand bandits whispered. Yes, their aura isn't any bit weaker than ours. It's quite respectable for someone his age to have that type of strength. Let our fellow brothers stay back. This fight isn't something they can handle. Sha Yulong said. Understood. The only reason why Feng Wushang brought all the soldiers was only for a display of might. He did not have any intention of letting them take part in the fight at all. After all, in the eyes of Feng Wushang, these soldiers were powerless ants. A single breath would be able to blow their existences away. They served no purpose at all. 14 sand bandits, surrender now and I can allow you guys to have a dignified death. Otherwise, it'll be a terrible sight if your bodies were to be found lying all torn apart everywhere. Feng Wushang scoffed coldly. Don't get all cocky now, you little thing. Back when Granddaddy here made his appearance in the scene, you were still in your mother's womb. Let Granddaddy here teach you a good lesson. The short and pygmy Sha Mieshang could take it lying no longer. Wielding his axes, he cleaved out towards Feng Wushang instantly. HMPH. A lesser celestial full cultivation state being as weak as an ant. You wouldn't be able to take even a single blow. Feng Wushang laughed coldly. Using his finger as a sword, he drew a line in the void. A sharp gleam of light burst forth. Sha Mieshang was taken aback as he used his axes to defend instantly. Clang! Against this sharp gleam of light, the axe cracked without any resistance at all. Thud! Third brother, Sha Yulong's face turned grim. Ha ha ha, and I thought he might be somebody. Turns out he was so weak. Honestly, the 14 sand bandits are made up of the ugliest people in the world. A pygmy dwarf, a blind bat, a mute. And look at that incredibly fat fella over there. If I didn't take a closer look, I might have thought that it was a pig right there. If you guys were to compare yourselves to me, wouldn't you guys feel inferior about your own appearances? Feng Wushang mocked them mercilessly. He couldn't be bothered about Sha Yulong and the others at all. Ha ha ha, all the other disciples of the dueling sect burst out laughing. The soldiers of the barren city were astounded at this sight before them. To think that this fella from the dueling sect would be this strong. They knew of the strength of the 14 sand bandits. Initially, they were just waiting to see the 14 sand bandits teach this fella a lesson. To think that this elder from the dueling sect would be this strong that he could send the third leader of the 14 sand bandits puking out blood with a single hit. You guys can come at me together. Otherwise, don't come blaming me, Feng Wushang, for not giving you guys any chances. Feng Wushang swept his robes and taunted overbearingly. Instantly, a tremendous aura burst forth from Feng Wushang. Behind Feng Wushang, the powers of the heaven and earth flashed intermittently. Good lad, your granddaddy here shall teach you a lesson. Sha Yulong roared out as the true energy within his body surged up while he lunged at Feng Wushang with a punch. Oh ho, greater celestial middle-level cultivation state being. That's some decent strength there, that's equivalent to me. But it's a pity. Feng Wushang's eyes shone with a glint as he opened his palms wide, causing a series of true energy to start rumbling. Sha Yulong could feel that berserk true energy as his face changed entirely. He felt as though his true energy was being controlled by the other party instead of himself. Piok! Instantly, Sha Yulong lost and was trampled down by the other party's feet. But, it's a pity that the difference between you and me is as great as the heaven and earth itself. At this moment, Feng Wushang was just like a heavenly deity who had descended upon the world. The disciples of the dueling sect looked at Feng Wushang with reverence. Such tyrannical power he possessed. What 14 sand bandits and whatnot. They were taken down in a single attack of his. The soldiers of the barren city yelped out with a face of disbelief. Big brother, looking at how Sha Yulong was being stepped on by the other party, the members of the 14 sand bandits were riled. Run, you guys are no match for him. Sha Yulong bellowed out. Now that he was being trampled down by the other party, he felt as though his true energy had been sealed up. There was no way for him to fight back at all. Ha ha, when I detain you back to the barren city, I'll chop off your head and hang it on the gates of the city. With that, you will serve as a warning for the masses. As for all these underlings of yours, there's no need for them to exist any longer. Feng Wushang laughed out coldly as his killing intent flashed out. A heaven-piercing sword will rose up from the ground. Waving his hand, the entire void seemed as though they were being sliced up. Stoop! The moment Sha Yulong saw this, he screamed out with a broken heart. He had not expected his defeat to come so quickly that he didn't even have time to react at all. For the 14 sand bandits, this chilling sword was something they couldn't defend against at all. They could feel the blood within their bodies freezing up as though they were sealed. Sha Yulong shut his eyes in unbearable pain. He could not bear to watch this. To think that things would turn out as such. But just at this moment, a voice rang out. To think that you would dare to touch my men as well. Seems like you're hopeless. This voice was extremely calm and carried neither joy nor sadness. The moment Lin Fan arrived here, he did not expect to see Sha Yulong and the others being overwhelmed. Where was he to put his face like this? No matter what, these guys had once spent some time with him. Now that they were being walloped as such, wasn't this just throwing away his face? Lin Fan stood upright on the head of Feng Wushang, and then pushed gently. With that, a massive amount of power burst forth as the ground began to crack. Instantly, Feng Wushang's entire body sank into the ground all the way up to his head. Lin Fan raised his head gently before stepping down once more. Bam! A loud explosion boomed out. The ground cracked all the way out as deep cracks extended all the way out till the boundaries of the world. Ding! Congratulations on killing. Highs. Seems like yet another genius was stepped to death by me. Sha Yulong, you guys are really disgracing me, aren't you? Lin Fan stood there with a face of helplessness. Instantly, time seemed to have been frozen in this world. All the disciples of the dueling sect were flabbergasted right now. As for the 14 sand bandits, this familiar voice, this figure. When Sha Yulong gently raised his head, he looked over and saw a familiar yet foreign figure, with his long hair breezing with the wind. He couldn't help but start shivering emotionally. Chapter 777, Overbearing Disciples. Chapter 777, Overbearing Disciples. Ah, such pleasure it was to stomp down on kindergarteners. Aren't you guys really excited to see me? Lin Fan chuckled out. Boss. Sha Yulong nearly forgot what he was about to say any longer. He then shook his head furiously and pinched himself. It was only then that he realized that this wasn't a dream. Everything was so real right now. Boss, are you really back? Sha Yulong's voice was hoarse as he asked in disbelief. Of course, could it be any more unreal than this? However, aren't you guys just too weak? To think that you guys would be beaten up as such by this small little shrimp. Lin Fan grinned out, using his finger to twirl around casually, a ring of light floated out with his finger as the center. One ring after another, they were filled with an unparalleled amount of life force. The injuries on some of the 14 sand bandits were grave as their bodies were rumbling with their blood right now. But with this life force, they regenerated at a horrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, they were perfect as before. When Sha Yulong and the others caught sight of their transformation, they let out extremely startled looks. To think that their boss would possess such an incredible skill. Boss, that fella is naturally a shrimp in your eyes. If you hadn't appeared, boss, we might have never been able to see you again, boss. Sha Yulong said rejoicefully. In the 5 years that Lin Fan had left, Sha Yulong had been working hard at raising his cultivation state. However, his innate potential wasn't all that powerful to begin with. Hence, the speed of his cultivation had been really slow as well. And of course, this was all Lin Fan's fault. Before he left, he had forgotten to train them up. If he had raised their potential even slightly, they would have grown to the heavens for sure. He killed the elder. He killed the elder. At this moment, a series of frantic cries rang out from the disciples of dueling sect. You're mad, one of the disciples yelled out. However, a disciple by his side covered up his mouth instantly with a look of fear on his face. To think that Elder Feng would have died just like that. Boss, hadn't you ascended up? Why are you back now? Now that the big brother was back, Sha Yulong naturally no longer had any fear. As for that dueling sect and whatnot, he no longer placed it in his heart. I'm back to take a look, as well as bring you guys up with me. For Lin Fan's return this time around, he did have those intents indeed. By now, Lin Fan had subdued Cruel and the Ancient One, and also killed Saint. As such, there were only 6 utmost beings of the ancient race left. For the ancient race, this was a disaster. Ever since he had killed Saint, he had obtained the eternal seed of the ancient race. This was the most critical item required for the ancient race beings to attain the eternal God seat. The might of the Ancient One was unparalleled. However, he was crippled by Lin Fan. Back then, in order to stop the Ancient One from recovering entirely, Lin Fan sacrificed the arm of the Ancient One entirely. With that, he successfully stopped the Ancient One from returning to his peak state. And, that arm of the Ancient One that Lin Fan had sacrificed, it should have long been used by Saint. However, now that Lin Fan had obtained Saint's eternal seat, it shouldn't be an issue for the Ancient One to return to his peak status. Ascend. The moment Sha Yulong heard this, he was stumped. He then let out an excited face. Boss. This ascension, does it mean immortality? Haha, in your dreams. Alright, let's not talk about that for now. You guys shall just follow me first. This time around, Lin Fan was ready for a good round of FC King. As far as Lin Fan was concerned, the human race was way stronger than any of the thousands of races. However, all they lacked was a single guide. But now, there was a talent such as yours truly. If the human race were to follow him, they would naturally soar high and far. Instantly, Lin Fan looked towards those disciples of the dueling sect. When the disciples of the dueling sect caught sight of Lin Fan's gaze, their hearts jerked as though they were caged up in fear. That man had killed Elder Feng with a single step. They had witnessed it with their very own eyes. If the other party wanted to kill them, it would be as simple as killing ants. Scram! Lin Fan's voice was thunderous. It was so booming that the ears of these disciples were hurting from just hearing it. But at this moment, this single word couldn't have brought more joy for them. The fact that they could even get to keep their lives was a blessing from the heavens. Dueling sect. Lin Fan had long known that this dueling sect was something that was created by that disciple of his, Yu Dueling. Highs. These two brats. They're truly way out of hand. Lin Fan was a little exasperated right now. He was only gone for 5 years, and yet they had managed to cause all of this ruckus. If he were to be gone for 10 or 20 years, wouldn't the entire Xuanwang world change entirely? All of the barren city soldiers watched everything with their jaws agape. That elder of the dueling sect who could beckon everything at his whim and will was stepped to death just like that. If they hadn't witnessed it for themselves, who in the world would believe this? Boss, where are we headed to now? To go teach those two brats a lesson. Lin Fan looked over into the distance. Everything within the Xuanwang world was in the palms of his hands. Saint Mystery City. This was the largest city in the entire Xuanwang Rodel. The population of this place amounted to hundreds of millions. The lands were vast like the Milky Way among galaxies. For any mere commoner, it would take them nothing short of years at least to even view every single corner of the Saint Mystery City. However, for the truly powerful beings, it would take them just a day or two to cross from the northern side of the city to the southern side. Along the streets, there was a group of people who attracted the gazes of many. Most of the commoners who walked by them dodged in fear. Well, it was mainly because the 14 sand bandits looked horribly frightening with their faces. A single look and one could tell that they weren't good guys. November LBJNN. This Saint Mystery City is not the largest city in the Xuanwang world for nothing. It's extremely magnificent. Even the streets are much wider than that of Barren City. Sha Yulong exclaimed out. Indeed, Lin Fan could not help but acknowledge as well. It had been just 5 years. To think that there would be such significant changes. If he were to give them another tens of years, who knows how the Xuanwang world would develop by then. Make way, make way. At this moment, there was some commotion coming from up ahead. The initially bustling streets started to get chaotic. Lin Fan and the 14 sand bandits stood at the side of the streets as a majestic carriage pulled by a beast breezed by them. There were curtains covering all 4 sides of the carriage. Within, there was a silhouette of a gorgeous figure sitting leisurely. Towards everything happening right now, everyone was long used to it. At this moment, there was a hawker up ahead who was unable to dodge in time. Just when he was about to be knocked head-on, Lin Fan used his finger to draw in the air, causing a strong breeze to knock the hawker aside. The hawker who had thought that he would be knocked to death crawled up from the ground. His face was both frightened and astonished at the same time. That's the beast carriage of the dueling female empress. That's right, it's really extremely majestic. However, for them to be traveling within the city at such speed, what would happen if they were to knock anyone over? Hush, don't you want your life anymore? If you were to be overheard, you'd definitely be in for it. Highs. The dueling female empress is ravishing without peer. Just, why must she be so tyrannical? I heard that the Saint Devil sect and the dueling sect are about to have a duel right here. I wonder what the outcome would be like. Comparing the Saint Devil sect and the dueling sect, they are both the same. These two sects are equally overbearing. I wonder why the city master wouldn't come out to stop them at all. These are major sects we're talking about. If the city master were to stand up against them, he might even lose his life. Lin Fan stood there silently. While he didn't say anything more, his brows did end up furrowing. Bloody mother CKER. By the sounds of it, aren't these two disciples of mine even more overbearing than I was? Chapter 778. The changes are too great. This little heart can't endure it all. Chapter 778. The changes are too great. This little heart can't endure it all. The pupil would surpass the master indeed. Lin Fan was feeling prideful. However, when he thought more about it, these two brats weren't all that old either. And yet, they were already so overbearing. If they were to grow older, wouldn't things get out of hand? By that time, would even he lose control over them as their master? At this moment, Lin Fan's heart chimed out. At the same time, he made a note to himself to mark down Zhang Ergo and the others, who were going crazy together with these two brats. If he didn't teach them a good lesson, the entire heavens might even topple over. But, Lin Fan was pretty interested to see just what sort of antics these two brats could cause. Now that the Dueling sect and the Saint Devil sect were arriving at the Saint Mystery City, the city master was thoroughly vexed and busied. In these few days that they were here, the entire Saint Mystery City was already in one hell of a huge mess. If they were to stay any longer, wouldn't the Saint Mystery City have a huge load of sh*t to clean up? Under his leadership, the Saint Mystery City had progressed really quickly. Everyone had food on their tables, and would enjoy prosperity together. But, in these mere few days, there had been countless of commoners who had been bullied by the disciples of these two major sects. And, if they felt grievance over it, there was nothing to be done even if they were to report it to the city officials. These guys could not be offended at all. Not at all. When the disciples of the other major sects were to head to the Saint Mystery City, the older generation within their sects would always warn them not to create any trouble. But yet, this Dueling sect and Saint Devil sect gave no FCKS at all. They didn't bother nor asked, as they allowed their disciples to act as they willed. Initially, he had tried looking for the members of these two major sects. However, he couldn't find anyone from the upper echelons at all. The only ones he could find were the normal elders. But when these normal elders looked at the city master of the Saint Mystery City, none of them would give him any face, as though they were looking at an ant. Later on, the city master tried seeking help from some of the other major sects as well. However, when they heard that it was the Dueling sect and the Saint Devil sect, they rejected him flatly. Therefore, the end result that he had concluded was this: even though he was the city master, there was no one among them that he could afford to offend. Lin Fan brought the 14 sand bandits with him to an inn to rest for a while before that so-called great match would start tomorrow. The next day, the Saint Mystery City turned evidently livelier. Countless martial artists headed over from all over the place. Within a single day, there was an ocean-like vast number of foreign martial artists within the Saint Mystery City. No matter where one went, one would always hear the crowd discussing fervently about the upcoming duel. But most of the crowd was actually discussing about how both the Grand Masters were extremely beautiful girls. And not only that, they were young and yet possessed heaven-defying strength. Towards the strength of Kai Chao and Yu Juling, Lin Fan was naturally extremely clear. These two brats had been trained up by him personally. As such, their potentials were unparalleled. One could even say that there was no equal for them within the entire Xuanwang world. With that, their cultivation speeds were naturally thousands of times faster than others. This was especially so with the booster of a large amount of pills. It was pretty difficult for them not to be strong. Boss, I'd say, aren't these people way too mysterious? They're only 13 or 14 years old, and yet they're already at greater celestial full cultivation state. Even if they were popping down chunks of pills, how could it be so crazy? Sha Yulong exclaimed in disbelief. Even though Sha Yulong had followed by Lin Fan's side before, there were still quite a number of things he did not know about him. You know what would be real weird? If they hadn't gotten to a greater celestial full cultivation state after taking 5 whole years. Lin Fan replied. Sha Yulong looked at Lin Fan and eventually decided not to say anything. He felt that comparing with others would ultimately bring death to oneself. And this was especially the case for the younger generation. They were getting more ferocious one generation after another. Let's go take a look. Lin Fan headed off into the distance. November LBJNN. Sha Yulong looked at Lin Fan. For some reason, he had a feeling that his boss wasn't feeling all that great right now. The place of the duel was the largest battle arena of the entire Saint Mystery City, and it was piling with people that had rushed here all for this duel. Lin Fan, Sha Yulong, and the other bandits looked for a place and sat down just like that. That dueling female empress and the Grand Master of the Saint Devil sector really genius beings of the world. I wonder who the master who could possibly train up such frightening disciples was. That's right. Right now, there are countless young men in the Xuanwang world who are thoroughly infatuated with these two miraculous girls. And that's not even counting the people who are aspiring to be like them. However, I've heard from the rumors that the Grand Masters of these two sects were both from the same sect in the past. How had things come to this point? Who knows? These two sects have been at each other's throats for some time now. Every 3 months, there would be a small competition, every half a year, a medium-sized competition, and a large-scale one every year. Who knows how many times they've been at it already? Listening to the praises of the surrounding audiences, Lin Fan chuckled out. Naturally, the only one who could groom up genius disciples as such would be none other than yours truly. In this world, other than yours truly, who else would have such capabilities? However, the coming words had Lin Fan's mood dampened down. However, I've got to say that these two sects are way too tyrannical. There have been many people who've been bullied by them. I heard that there was once a Grand Master of a small sect who had begrudged that they were way too overbearing. As such, he was hung to be whacked, and was punished to kneel down for 3 days and 3 nights straight. Highs, the wastrel of a son is all because of the father's teachings. Even though these two Grand Masters are genius disciples, they are simply way too overbearing. I don't reckon that their master should be any good soul either. Hush, softer, how could you dare to say such things out loud? At this point, Lin Fan was so angry his entire face was almost turning green. Damn it, he was Mother Sea King taking the blame for no reason. These two brats were all alright from the start. Why in the world would they start fighting at one another just like this? I don't think you guys have got that quite right. Lin Fan could not bear with it anymore as he felt that he ought to clear his name. The men seated behind Lin Fan were stunned. They then asked him in bewilderment, what's not right? I heard that their master is a really upright and noble character who has saved the Xuanwang world countless times. Lin Fan praised himself without blushing at all. Brother, how do you know about that? Well, I'm their master. For a moment, Lin Fan did not know what else to reply. After holding it in for quite some time, he got straight to the point. The men behind him looked at one another. Without saying anything more, they stood up and left for another place to sit. This man doesn't seem that old. To think that he would be spouting nonsense there. I think there's something wrong with his brains. We should hide further from him, lest we attract any troubles to ourselves. When Lin Fan heard these words, he was so angry that he did not know what else to say anymore. His face then turned grim. It's all the fault of those two damned brats. I'm going to teach them a good lesson later on. At this moment, Lin Fan pinned the issue directly on the both of those brats. Boom! A series of applause rang out as figures flashed out of the void. Above the duel area were a bunch of seats. They're here. The dueling female empress is here. That's the Grand Master of the Saint Devil sect, Judean female empress. There were people appearing endlessly. When Lin Fan looked at these people, he could not help but feel nostalgic. He could see them arriving one after another, and they had not changed at all. They still looked the exact same. Roar! Suddenly, a furious growl boomed out. The entire world turned into a snow-white state as a series of frosty, bone-chilling snow flowers floated down from the sky. A gigantic figure that covered the entire sky appeared. That's the Snow Lion. She's the mount of the Judean female empress. It's extraordinary indeed. Just the aura alone is enough to give one goosebumps. Lin Fan had not expected for that Snow Lion of the past to have such a huge transformation in just 5 years. In fact, she was even stronger than her mother right now. The gigantic Snow Lion began to change and shrink down until she eventually came down to the side of Zhichao. Kukuk koo. When Lin Fan heard this sound, he grinned widely. All he could see was a patch of fiery red in the sky as though an ocean of flames was slowly spreading out. Chicky. When the masses raised their heads into the void, they started discussing. That's the guardian beast of the dueling sect. Even though it looks really strange, they say that it's really powerful. That's right. I wonder what sort of a beast it is. Even the dueling female empress has to be respectful to it. At this moment in the void, Chicky still retained that cocky attitude he once had. There weren't many changes about him. However, that tail of his had 4 more tails compared to before. He was now 7-tailed. When Lin Fan saw that Chicky's powers had grown to this extent, he felt extremely heartened. But immediately after, his jaw dropped to the ground as though he had just witnessed something extremely horrifying. Since God knows when, he saw 3 chickens standing behind Chicky all of a sudden. Each of them was only a quarter of Chicky's size. One of them was dressed in gold and silver, looking extremely wealthy. One of them had all sorts of colors all over its body, with its hair standing upright. This was an absolute hipster. And there was another one that was extremely fat. If one didn't take a careful notice, one might not be able to tell its body from its head. Even right at that moment, there was a huge piece of meat hanging from its mouth as it waved its wings furiously while following tight behind Chicky. Chicky came beside Juling and headed straight for the seat before lying down. Instantly, a number of disciples gushed forth and started massaging his wings and legs instantly. As for Chicky, he let off a look of absolute pleasure. Holy FCK, what in the Mother Sea King world happened here? At this moment, Lin Fan was practically exploding. That tiny, fragile heart of his could barely take this any longer. Chapter 779, This is a complex question. Chapter 779, This is a complex question. Lin Fan had always known that Chicky was a lustful chicken. However, he could have never imagined that just 5 years of not seeing this fella and Chicky had already produced 3 chicklings. And not just that, they were one more exquisite than the other. How in the world did they grow up as such? Highs. Lin Fan sighed out. He had never once doubted that these 3 chicklings didn't belong to Chicky. Just the size of them alone proved that they were made from the same mold. The city master of the Saint Mystery City sat there helplessly. For a moment or so, he did not know what to do. Looking left and right, he did not have a single clue at all. He could only hope that things could tide through peacefully this time around, and he could send then these 2 gods on each side away smoothly. HMPH. Zhichao and Yu Juling exchanged glances with one another before snorting out coldly. Junior sister, even if you don't wish to, you've got to admit it this time around. It had been 5 years since Lin Fan last saw Zhichao. She had now lost her childlike demeanor. Every single movement she made brought with her an immensely strong authority. Senior sister, what are you doing all of this for? We've been at it for a few years now. Yet, you haven't been able to do anything much to me. I am the one who has inherited the authentic legacy of our master. And, it's also a fact that you're not my equal. Yu Juling replied. The Saint Devil sect is the true legacy. And that Juling sect or whatnot of yours. What does it even amount to? There was a look of contempt on that exquisite face of Kai Zhichao. Saint Devil sect was left for you by our big senior brother. I don't need that. You're only picking up after what others don't want. Our master has led his life with an illustrious reputation. How can I, Yu Juling, let someone like you be my senior sister? Yu Juling replied with disdain. Junior sisters, how about both of you argue with a sentence less? Tian Yu said out in exasperation. Up till this day, he had no idea how things had come to this. A few days before the splitting of the sect, things were still fine. However, all of a sudden, these 2 junior sisters came up with the idea of splitting the sect apart and they headed straight to the big senior brother to force him to let up his position. Shut up. Zhichao and Yu Juling turned their heads together at Tian Yu, who could only sigh helplessly. He got aimed at for nothing yet again. Zhang Ergo sat there with a hand placed on his forehead. He could only feel a huge headache right now. As the big senior brother, he truly did not know what he should do towards this. These 2 junior sisters of his were the favorite of his master. Should he hit them? He didn't dare to. Should he scold them? He didn't know how he should do it. Initially, he had thought that these 2 junior sisters would patch up after a while. But, who would have thought that the argument would only get more severe, till a state where they did not know how to pick up after anymore. At this moment, Zhang Ergo thought back of his master. If only his master were around, a single look from him would be able to hold down these 2 brats. But now that things had reached this irrevocable state, Zhang Ergo could only hand down the roles helplessly. He and Tian Yu would follow along Zhichao, while Mie Chongqi and Feng Buju would follow Yu Juling. In Zhang Ergu's eyes, this was extremely fair, without any bit of biasedness. He didn't even let off the beasts. Since Zhichao had the snow lion, Zhang Ergo pleaded with Chicky to follow along with Yu Juling. This was the fairest method of distribution, such that the 2 junior sisters could not complain about anything else. As for Gong Bingye, she was the one caught in the middle. She had single-handedly brought up these 2 brats. Eventually, she had no choice and decided to take no sides and stay within Glory Sect. And, in Zhang Ergu's opinion, it was thankful that their strength were pretty decent. This was especially so given that there were sects which were really close to their master, such as Glory Sect, Xuanjian Sect, and Jushao Sect that were watching over them. Otherwise, who would even know how many sects would come attacking them over the troubles caused by these 2 brats? As for the separate businesses conducted by these 2 brats, Zhang Ergo had never acknowledged any of the disciples they had taken in after. As for the sects that these 2 brats owned, he did not acknowledge them either. To him, the only Saint Devil sect he would acknowledge was one with his master in it, not these two sects that were popped out of nowhere by these two brats. Big senior brother, you tell us. For the past few years, who has done the best? Who is the one who has inherited the true legacy of our master? The two brats looked at their big senior brother as though this matter would not be over with until he gave them an answer. This. Well, both of you are decent. Zhang Ergo could only reply as such. No, that's not right. You've got to give us one single answer. Zhang Ergo really felt like bellowing out that he was their big senior brother. He wanted to threaten that if both of them continued to act so insolently, things would be over for the both of them. However, he could only think about it in his heart. He didn't have the guts to bellow it out loud. This. For a moment, Zhang Ergo did not know what to say at all, as he cast his sights on Feng Buju. Zhang Ergo's intentions were clear. As the second senior brother, you can't possibly get through this without saying anything at all, right? When Feng Buju caught sight of the knowing expression shot by Zhang Ergo, he jerked his head away furiously and looked at that non-mainstream hipster son that Chicky was hugging in his wings. "Oh, chicken too, your hair's looking quite stylish these days, Cuckoo." The hipster chicken too raised his fabulous head and cried out a few times, indicating his happiness. "Senior brother, you say." The both of them turned around to look at Mie Changqi. Mie Changqi had mastered the unkillable indestructible. As such, his heart was firm and resolute, and his face was always cold and frosty. He was someone who had control over life and death. However, at this moment, he too could not help but feel stranded. Eventually, he put on a straight face and replied. "This is a really complex question. You've got to let your senior brother here go and take some good time to research on it. I'll give you guys an answer a few years later. Senior brother, you're a fence-sitter who swings both ways. Some time back, you had said that I did better." Yu Juling remarked unhappily. That ice-cold face of hers let out a trace of displeasure. Right now, Mie Changqi could be considered as one of the top-tiered powerful beings within the entire Xuanwang world. Even the Grand Master of Glory sect was no longer a match for him. Out in the world, everyone knew of Mie Changqi as the death god. If any mere commoners were to say something like this, they would die without even knowing how they died. However, right now, Mie Changqi's face was as calm as still waters. He pretended as though he heard nothing. Raising his head into the void, Mie Changqi could not help but lament, "Ah, dear master, you left so easily and without a care. To think that you would leave with us a huge mess to clean up after. Chicky, you say, if I did the best, you nod your head. If she did the best, you shake your head." Zhichao looked at Chicky and asked. "Cuck, I asked you to nod or shake your head, not cuck." Cuck. Chicky was like a dead corpse right now as he laid there. No matter what they asked, he would reply with a cuck. There was no other type of response. Each time a duel happened, something as such would happen as well. For Zhang Ergo and the others, this was undeniably a form of torment. Unable to get the answer they wanted in their hearts, both Zhichao and Yu Juling snorted coldly before glaring at one another once more. "Let us lay bare our cards on the tables. I've just got to see if the disciples you've trained up are stronger than the ones that I've trained up." Zhichao shouted out in a fit. "By all means. Back when Master was around, you were already unable to compete with me. And now that Master isn't around, do you really think that the disciples you've taught could be more powerful than mine?" Yu Juling chuckled out. "Watch and see. Lin Fan was hidden within the crowd right now. He took a good look at everyone on those seats. One after another, he could not help but nod his head in approval. Zhang Ergu's cultivation state had gotten stronger. Right now, he was already a greater celestial full cultivation state being. At the same time, Zhang Ergo gave off a strong pill aura. Lin Fan could tell that his pill cultivation techniques must have improved by leaps and bounds. However, the pill aura that was wrapping around Zhang Ergo did have Lin Fan looking at him in a different light. November LBJNN. Given Lin Fan's mastery of cultivating pills, a single look at the pill aura of a person would be enough for him to know about the sort of pills cultivated by those people. And with Zhang Ergu's pill aura, he could see that they were practically all really shady pills. Dong. Let the duel begin. At this moment, the main event had started. Chapter 780. Asking to be struck by lightning. Chapter 780. Asking to be struck by lightning. Lin Fan did want to see just what sort of tricks these two brats could pull off. Authentic sect, could this be what they were fighting over that resulted in this duel? At this moment, something made sense to Lin Fan. These two disciples of his were girls. The depths of a woman's thoughts were like an ocean. At one moment, it could be all calm and nice, and at another, the entire world could topple and crash over. Even if it were just a small thing, anything could work as a fuse for chicks, leading them to blow up so badly one could practically question one's entire life over it. At the same time, Lin Fan was deeply skeptical about Zhang Ergu's role as the big senior brother now. When yours truly wasn't around, that guy should be the head of the family. And yet, he was pushed back so badly by those two brats. Wasn't this embarrassing or what? Towards Zhang Ergu, Lin Fan had many things that he wanted to spit out right in his face at this moment. However, he bore with it for now. I've just got to see how much more of a mess you guys can create. Lin Fan folded his hands as he stood there without moving. His intention was clear, please go on with the show. Time passed by the seconds and minutes. The first part of the duel was all between the bunch of disciples. While this might be spectacular in the eyes of others, for someone as experienced as Lin Fan, they weren't worth a single mention. Right now, the excitement within the atmosphere was at its peak. There were many members from different sects who had gathered to observe this duel. At the same time, the elders of these sects were full of comments as well. Even though that disciple is only a lesser celestial lower-level cultivation state being, the amount of strength that he has displayed would be enough to fight with a middle-level being. Just how in the world are the Saint Devil sect and the Dueling sect training their disciples? How is it so effective? Senior sister, my apologies. Your junior sister has humbly won. Yu Juling's brows twitched up as she smirked. HMPH. Kai Zhichao snorted coldly. She then stood up with a frosty expression. Senior sister, what are you trying to do? Could it be that you're a sore loser? Yu Juling asked. Junior sister, you and I, come. Whoever loses shall have to disband their sect. At the same time, from now on forth, as long as the winner appears somewhere, the loser would have to scram far from the place. Zhichao said. Both junior sisters, don't mess around more than this. You're both from the same sect and are both disciples of our master. Don't let small stuff like these destroy our harmonious relationship. If master were to find out about this, he would get angry. Zhang Ergu cried out. Big senior brother, you said that I can't compare with her. Today, I'm going to prove myself. Zhichao replied seriously. Junior sister, you can't slander your big senior brother here. Since when did your big senior brother say something as such? Zhang Ergu was stumped as he cried foul immediately. When you went to drink with our senior brothers the fateful day, I heard you from the outside. Zhichao said. What? Zhang Ergu was stunned. Did he say something like this? Zhang Ergu tried to recall frantically. Suddenly, he thought back to a couple of days back before both his junior sisters fell out with one another. He did seem to have treated all his junior brothers to a good round of drinks. And on that fateful day, it did seem as though he had said something like how Zhichao's potential wasn't comparable to Juling's. Junior sister, your big senior brother here was drunk back then. Zhang Ergu tried explaining himself. He hadn't expected that casual conversation that he had with his junior brothers after drinking could have stirred up such an intense fighting spirit within Zhichao. Big senior brother, one always speaks the truth while drunk. Zhichao remarked. She then turned over to look at Yu Juling. Do you dare? Senior sister, you want to fight with me over everything. When I called myself the Juling female empress, you called yourself the Judian female empress. You just want to one-up me in everything I do. Since you wish to fight that badly, then your junior sister would naturally comply with you till the end. But, when you lose later on, senior sister, don't come crying to me and refusing to acknowledge defeat with a nose full of snot. Yu Juling replied. HMPH. Who's afraid of whom? Zhichao and Yu Juling's figures flashed nimbly, and in the blink of an eye, they were already on the battle arena. The disciples of all the different sects who were watching this began to discuss fervently. Both the Juling female empress and the Judian female empress are really pretty. Aren't you just stating the obvious? If that weren't the case, would we have been idolizing them so madly over the past few years? I've been thinking day and night. If only I could marry one of them as my partner, how nice would that be? It would be worth it even if it cost me 10 years of my life. You're practically daydreaming right now. Even if it cost you 100 years of your life, you wouldn't have a chance at all. Why do you have to say that? Don't I even have the rights to dream? Lin Fan's brows furrowed before relaxing down. Now that things had come to such, he might as well take a good look at just how far these two brats had progressed. Back when he had just left, he had imparted quite a bit of his knowledge to them. However, he did not know how their mastery over the knowledge had been over the past few years. Both of his disciples were extremely blessed with talents. Back when he had taken in Zhao as his disciple, the potential of that brat was practically trash. However, under his guidance, her potential had already been pushed to its limits. As for Yu Juling, her potential back when he took her in was already pretty decent. Later on, following his careful guidance, her potential had reached its peak as well. It could be said that even if he were to toss these two brats into the ancient saint world, they could be peerless geniuses. All of a sudden, the entire scene went silent while Zhao and Juling glared at one another. The single rustling of a leaf marked the signal for them to strike. Not bad. When Lin Fan caught sight of the scene, he could not help but nod his head in acknowledgement. The prowess displayed by both of them was pretty decent. Big senior brother, what should we do now? Feng Buju asked with a dumbstruck look. If you ask me, who am I to ask? You know about the temper of these two junior sisters as well. They would only relent under coaxing and not coercion. Other than our master, no one else can rein them in check. Zhang Ergo replied helplessly. However, he still focused all his attention on the proceedings nevertheless. If anything were to head south, he would step in immediately. When the city master of the Saint Mystery City saw this, he started sweating profusely. How can they do this? This battle arena isn't made to withstand the force produced by two greater celestial full cultivation state beings at all. Bam! The battle arena began to crack under duress. The moment both of them struck, it brought forth an immense tornado. Spectacular. This is way too spectacular. To think that these two young girls would possess a power of this level. The bunch of old brutes like us have really been wasting our lives like dogs. Sha Dulong could not help but lament. The rest of the 14 sand bandits nodded their heads as they could not help but agree. Lin Fan was watching carefully, and would frown from time to time. These two disciples of his. The skills of their legs were pretty darned vicious, weren't they? Balls kicking. It's displayed to the point of perfection. If not for the fact that they're both aware of the power of this skill, they might even underestimate it themselves. For these two brats to be able to master that move to such a state, I wonder how many people must have suffered for it. ... Stop. You must both stop. Are you guys bent on destroying the entire Saint Mystery City? When the city master saw how the entire ground was crumbling apart, with the damage extending outwards, he was startled. If this were to continue on, the surrounding structures might be unable to handle the tremors and end up crumbling apart. Scram! Zhao and Juling roared out in unison. By now, they were fighting so badly that their eyes had turned red. The city master of the Saint Mystery City gulped down his saliva. He was filled with fear towards these two powerful beings. However, he had no other choice but to stand out, given how the situation was unfolding. If this were to carry on, even the entire Saint Mystery City might topple over. For these powerful beings, the common folks might be nothing but ants. However, to him, they were all his citizens. As the battle between both of them continued, the auras that they were emitting intensified. If they weren't careful, anything in the radius of 100 miles, no, even 1,000 miles might feel the reverberations. Junior sisters, that's enough. Zhang Ergo stood up. Junior sister, I'm not going to lose to you. Zhao roared out. She didn't take in Zhang Ergo's words at all. Even if you don't want to lose, you will. There's no way you can win against me. Yu Juling wasn't bothered at all either. Boom! A move of theirs collided and shone out with a bedazzling radiance. A series of aftershocks burst forth from it. When the city master caught sight of this scene, his entire face was drained of color. Even being caught in between this power was enough for him to feel as though his body could tear apart at any moment. Junior brothers, step in. We've got to stop this. Today, our junior sisters are getting a little out of hand here. Zhang Ergo called out hurriedly. Yes, Feng Buju and the others nodded their heads. This situation right now did seem a little overboard. There were countless common folks within the Saint Mystery City. This place mustn't be destroyed by their junior sisters. ... And just at the very moment when Zhang Ergo and the rest flew up into the voids, they could feel a tremendous amount of power that was gushing down in the entire universe. That's enough. All of a sudden, a thunderous voice boomed out. In fact, the entire world even started quaking as though it could not withstand this power at all. Zhang Ergo and the others were rooted. This power left them feeling entirely helpless. Zhao and Juling, who were in the midst of exchanging blows, had their expressions changing immediately. The powers within their bodies boiled as a wrathful anger surged right into their hearts. "Who is there? Get the hell out." The moment Lin Fan heard these words, he was stunned. These disciples were scolding their master. For a moment, Lin Fan could not even catch his breath at all. They were asking to be struck by lightning. I see that your wings are firm now. Good. Very good. Lin Fan bolted up from his seat as his eyes were filled with fury. Looking over into the distance, that mighty and authoritative presence of his erupted forth. Zhang Ergo and the others turned their heads over to the voice. At that moment, their faces changed. Zhe Chao and Yu Juling were consumed with rage right now. But when they saw the figure over in the distance, November LBJNN, they froze up entirely.